Commission meeting for November 9th, 2012 to order. And we'll stand for a moment of silent reflection and the pledge led by County Auditor Julie Pearson.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is to review and approve the agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to make any changes to the agenda?
Good morning, Commissioners. Holly Henning, your office man, and your...
Guess what?
I would like to ask you to remove item 33A, which are the 3 department head annual performance evaluations we have scheduled for today. I would like to discuss rescheduling them in December when we talk about the department head evaluation procedure.
33A, you say?
Yes, sir.
We have some comments?
No, I have another item to pull.
You what?
I have another item to pull.
Okay.
I request that the board pull 20A. It will be coming back to you in a different format. All this bookkeeping stuff.
Any other items or changes? Do we have a motion to change the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda with the exception, with the removal of items 20A and 33A.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded to amend the agenda by removing item 20A and 33A. Any discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next is the consent agenda. Holly?
Yes, for public notice, the Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed for consideration on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. Today, I have placed the following items for consideration. Item number 5, minutes of the regular meeting from October 16th, 2012. Approval of the vouchers in the amount of $469,238.63. Approval and chairman's signature on the Homeland Security 2012 Grant Award submitted from Emergency Management. Approval and chairman's signature of the 2013 Joint Funding Agreement with the U.S. Geological Survey for the Met-Warren System, also submitted by Emergency Management. Approval of the Edelweiss Mountain Improvement Association 2013 Agreement for Snow Removal submitted by Highway. Approval of the South Dakota Department of Transportation Site Use Agreement for a sand/salt stockpile submitted by Highway. Approval of the Adopt a Highway request for a portion of Longview Road by the 28 MXS of Ellsworth Air Force Base submitted by Highway. Approval of Adopt a Highway request for a portion of Universal Drive by the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, American Indian Science and Engineering Society chapter, submitted from Highway. Approval of the Sunset Ranch Road District Agreement, submitted by Highway. Authorization to go out for bid for 2 loaders and a single drum vibratory roller, submitted by Highway. A request for authorization to go out for bid for a 2012 vehicle order, submitted from the Sheriff's Office. A request to schedule a public hearing on November 20th, 2012 for a general fund supplement SP 12-027 for the weed and pest budget. And finally, a request for approval to hold a raffle from the South Dakota American Legion Auxiliary.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to remove any items from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is item 18, 40-acre surplus property of public auction that was held on November 1. Julie Pearson.
Well, if it could go wrong on our last sale, it obviously did. We had to declare a no sale as the apparent high bidder was bidding the piece of property as a whole piece versus per acre. We did not think we had authority to offer it to the second highest bidder, and feeling that the apparent high bidder had started the bidding process, that it was that the price that we were getting for it was not a true sale. So we called. Our only option was to declare it a no sale and to replicate the sale as quickly as possible and as much and duplicate it as much as we could. So we are requesting that the 40-acre surplus property auction be held on December 4th after the county commissioners meeting on the 3rd, so we don't have to find another building or another place to hold it. In the past, our office had been advised by past state's attorneys that sale had to be, I know there's discussion on where to hold it, had to be held in the Pennington County Courthouse. That's why we've always done it that way, very similar to the way the sheriff's property sale has to be sold on the front steps. The tax certificate sale has to be held in the Pennington County Courthouse. If you want to have Jay review that, if you want to move it, you would have to have that done very quickly. So our auctioneer that would be able to do it for us, since we're trying to replicate the exact sale, is here today. If you have any questions of him, whether he needs or wants an additional advertising budget. But as it sits now, we're recommending that you at least set the sale without the other tax deed properties that we have set for December 4th at 3 p.m., which is okay through McPherson auction.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I do have one. And Julie, do we need an action of the county commission to verify the no sale so we have the paper trail in the minutes and
That probably wouldn't be a bad idea. And you can state the reason for that, for prosperity. Probably be a good idea, actually.
down the road
I hadn't thought
another
of that.
117 years from now?
Yeah, 117 years. That would be very, actually very prudent. I hadn't thought of that, Ken. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I guess the bidder can be lucky that I wasn't here, because I'd have made him go through with it, because every sale I've been to, whether you made a mistake or not, you bought it. But, Mr. McPherson, I'm not in favor of paying advertising twice. So where are we sitting with that?
I understand that totally. And where we stand with that is we do intend to file a small claim to action against that high bidder in order to, to attempt to recoup as much as we can on those advertising and promotional costs that we did incur.
Okay.
And as far as maybe an answer or maybe in clarification, as far as the day of the auction itself, I would have fully intended to and would have done everything in our power to sit at this table with that gentleman to get his signature on that line and to get his 20% earnest money deposit, but I cannot force him to do that.
I understand.
And so it is a frustrating situation for everyone involved, from all of the buyers, interested buyers, bidders that were here that took time out of their day, commission, auditor's office, treasurer's office, everybody that was involved in it. And it is an unfortunate situation, but here's the great side of that, is we've had a tremendous amount of interest in the property since the declaration of a no sale. And so it'll be interesting to see what it does the second time around. We've had people fly in from eastern part of the state to look specifically at this property, and there's daily we have at least 2 to 3, even 4 calls of completely new people that didn't understand that they may be able to buy some Black Hills property for that kind of money. per acre. And we'll make sure that, even though we did announce that several times at the auction, we'll make sure that we announce it several times more. But there's a tremendous amount of interest out there. So just, I want you to know that I don't think there's any way that the property is going to sell for the high bid price or the suspected high bid price that we had on the first. I think it's going to be over that this time.
Very good, thank you.
I have a question. Is it a common practice or an acceptable practice to require that when someone signs up as a bidder, that they have a letter of credit or some other verification that they are financially able to meet the obligation?
In our area, Mr. Peterson, it's not a common practice. It's not uncommon to have that on a national scale. That does happen quite honestly, almost every auction that they do. Have we gotten to that point here? I'd like to think not, because it does put another layer of complexity to the auction process. Do we need to do that in this particular case with this particular sale? I think we would recommend that in order to register, we're going to require something of a cashier's check. And I don't know what that amount's going to be, but it's going to be substantial enough to where they're going to, we know that if they come to the party with a $20,000 cashier's check in hand, that they're ready to play. And that it isn't going to be an issue at the end of the day.
If you're going to require that, we would request that be included in the motion so that it's clear for everybody, so that when we do our legal advertising, which is required, it's 2 very small ads, that it be made clear. In that also we're going to put in our legal ads that it's going to be per acre, which was not clear before. So, if that's the board's desire.
And to maybe just to clarify that, or to further bring that to the top, very rarely do we sell real estate at a per lot price, or a per piece, or a per parcel price. It's when that happens, it's mostly it's either a lot, a residential lot, or something that's 1 or 2 acres, or there are differences within that. But real estate auctions across the board, across the country, are by the acre, or per acre, times however many acres you're selling, and that's just the norm. And so, there's lots of education that goes on every day in the world of life, but that's one of them that I'm sure that young man is going to remember for a good long time. And unfortunately, it happened for him the way it did, and unfortunately, everybody is here. But the beautiful part of this is that it's still a nice piece of land, and there's still a tremendous amount of interest in it. So I think we're going to be all right.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I'd hate to see us start implementing new rules just because we had one little stumbling block. This young man, I think he was sincere when he was making his bids, and he made a mistake. He didn't understand it. Like you said, he's learned a lesson. But now to start implementing rules that says people have got to come in with a $20,000 cashier's check when that's never been a problem in the past. I don't think we're going to do it on our tax deed sales, are we?
No, they don't usually go for enough.
It would appear to me that if we do this, if we start this new rule for this one mistake, that's what the legislature does. They have one law violation, and they pass a damn law that makes it a very serious crime. So I wouldn't be in favor of that.
Any other discussion? If not, we do.
I would just address that, Mr. Holloway, and I agree 100%. We've had conversation in our office talking about the same issue. And I don't want to penalize the 99.99% of the folks that are out there just because of a mistake or a misunderstanding. And we'll certainly go with the direction that you folks give us on that. It is something that does happen around the country. It as a rule, doesn't happen here. Maybe we need to at some point. But I think everybody else in the room understood the rules of the game. And
I think most people in South Dakota, their word is good. And so
Yes.
if they say they're going to do it, they'll do it. And I don't think we ought to beat this young man up just because he was probably first land auction he's ever been to.
yes, I agree 100%.
Anything else? We do have a gentleman here who wishes to comment on this issue. So Scott, if you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners. Thank you for taking the time to read the email that I sent you. and respond to me over the telephone. The only commissioner I was not able to visit with was Commissioner Holloway. My issue with this, as you've seen in the email, is really two things. It has to do with the nature with how the property came about and how the county ended up with the property. We can't go back and fix what happened years and years ago. The other issue has to do with the property itself. It's a truly isolated property. It's very remote. It's in one parts of the hills that is still very remote and very difficult to get to. I'm a landowner. As the bird flies, I'm probably about 5 miles south of this, have a ranch up by Moon. And it would really be a travesty if we took this little 40 acres and turned it back over to the private sector. Whoever buys this 40 acres is probably going to build a cabin on it. Snowmobile trail number one goes right through it. There's other parcels around that. Harold owns a couple of 40 acres pieces that were part of this. How they got separated, I think, is something that happened many, many years ago. But I don't think we have to worry about Harold turning into a developer and developing those pieces. So I think my argument to the commissioners is, number one, I would encourage you to step back a little bit and think about this and see if there's a way forward with the Forest Service. I have talked to several people at the Forest Service, and they would be very eager to get this 40 acres back and put it back underneath the public sector. You know, the Black Hills are really a small, very, very small, 125 miles long, 65 miles wide, Newcastle to Hermosa and Spearfish to Edgemont. You know, that constitutes 5 million acres, but there's a very small, only 25% of that is Forest Service. And there's an awful lot of private ground in there. You can argue all day long on how did that private ground get there. And it probably really got there by the federal government allowing homesteaders to go in there to support the mining industry at the turn of the century. But I think it would be a travesty on this 40 acres to turn it back over to the private sector and allow somebody to go in there and probably build a cabin. The young man that bid at the auction, his intent was to build a fence and put some cows in there, and that's a ridiculous notion. There's no water there. The 40 acres could probably support a couple of goats, and that's about it, but you still have to get water to it. Access is very difficult. A combination of improved and unimproved Forest Service roads and then a couple of goat trails to get you there. Again, I would encourage you to step back and think, at least give it time to see if there isn't a way forward with the Forest Service. I'd be more than happy to ferry each one of you up there to show you the property. I don't know if you've even seen it, but I'd be happy to take the time to do that.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Gross?
I think I have one of Jay.
You what?
I would like to ask Jay something.
Jay?
Jay?
Thank you, Mr. Gross.
Thank you. Jay, there was some exchange of information trying to figure out if the county can legally gift this property to the Forest Service. Did you ever get?
I did get
answer?
a chance to kind of look at that, and I believe there is a state statute that would allow that.
Okay.
There's a few conditions in that. In fact, I'll just give you this so you can pass it around.
Thank you.
A couple of the conditions are that the notice for that has to be through a federal rule, and that's something that if a Forest Service official or the local district were interested in pursuing that request, they could certainly help us out with what that would be, because that wouldn't be in our state statute, that'd be a federal rule. Plus, there's a statute, the next one down from that one, Commissioner Troutman, that says we would have to reserve any mineral rights. So if we were to donate the acreage to the Forest Service, by state law, we're required to reserve in that donation or that deed any mineral rights. So that would be something that if the federal government didn't like that idea, I suppose, then that'd be another reason or a reason why we would not be able to do it. But yes, I believe that statute does authorize the county to make that donation if the Forest Service desires it and you desire it.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to make that motion for the minutes to no sale this property, and because of the reasons that we all know why, and I think Karen can find the right words to put that into the minutes.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion and a second to officially record the no sale of the property. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Where do we wish to go? Anyone else? Julie, do you have any further comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would make a motion to proceed with the sale of this property on December 4th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on that day.
Let's see, was there anything else you said we needed to add to a motion?
You can make the decision on the additional advertising in this motion or at a later point
A separate?
today.
Okay, let's keep them separate. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to proceed with the auction on December 4th at 3 o'clock. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, is there any validity in considering keeping this into public land rather than and selling it for private land? I mean, granted, we might get some money out of it, but it's kind of a windfall because we didn't even know we owned it before.
I guess, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
along those lines, I'd be interested in what's been going on with this property for the last 100 years.
It's been Forest Service, I assume. It's been assumed to be Forest Service.
It's been assumed to be Forest Service. In fact, they had a
Yeah,
snowmobile trail
okay,
through
but-
it, which they have moved.
There's been something done with it, grazing or?
There's been cows on it.
There's been cattle out. So somebody's been using it for nothing.
There's cattle all throughout that, up on that.
Sure.
And it's all open range, basically.
There's some forest from the lakes,
Ah.
parts of it. There are fences and gates.
But they get Forest Service permits for the run their cattle. So I assume that people thought it was part of the Forest Service.
And if you look on the Forest Service maps, it's designated as Forest Service.
Well, I don't know that that's correct. I challenge that. Every map that I've looked at shows it as white according to all of the other private-owned property that's around it to the north and to the west. So I don't know that any map that I see has got any kind of designation that it's Forest Service. It's all white with the other deeded ground that's around it.
Janet, do you have a comment?
Yeah, that grin on your face.
Do you want me to explain what happened? Some years ago, when Rob was the Director of Equalization, they discovered that this land but did not belong to the Forest Service. So what they did is they went out and they put it on the tax roll. This piece of property they missed. So when they put it on the tax roll, we put a certificate on it, advertised it, and we sold it. There was 3 40-acre parcels. 2 of them were purchased from the tax certificate by Mr. Beese. through the advertising and stuff. When we got to looking at it, we found out that there was another 40 acres that belonged to Mr. Pruitt also. So we went and did the research on that. When we started to do the research, it became bigger than what we thought it was going to be because it involved Shannon, it involved Jay, Patrick, myself, Donna, because when they had a tax certificate on it, but when they typed the deed for Pennington County back in the early 1900s, they did not wait the 60 days for the county to own the property. They typed the deed, 5 days early, Jay?
I don't recall exactly.
It was just a few days, which made the deed void. So then what we did is we went down and we went through everything chronologically. We put the taxes on. We figured the interest back to the 1900s, which came to over $100,000, advertised it in the paper, and originally it was part of the Pruitt property. And it was not. The federal government deeded it back to Pruitt.
So what?
So that's how it got missed.
Yeah, and if you'd have caught it at the time you sold this other 80 acres that Beast bought, he'd have got all
He'd
of
have
it.
probably purchased that one too. That's
Or
correct.
What did
And
we
I
get out of
think it was like $26,000 or something
27 something.
that he paid
For that
for
80
each,
acres?
no, for each 40-acre property. So that's how it got missed.
Any further discussion? Anyone? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Holloway,
Yes.
Troutman,
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes. Motion carried.
At least if Beast is gonna get it, he'll have to pay for it.
Now you need to decide if you want us to do additional advertising. We are required to do special legal ads in the paper. And we just need to know if you want us to do additional advertising. The costs of taking the property, holding the property, and selling the property, all those costs come off of the purchase price first. Then any specials are paid off. After the specials are paid off, if there are any, then that remainder of the sale price goes out to the entities as the lands lie and as a portion to all the districts. So it's a windfall to all those districts in a minute amount if in comparison to what they levy, but and then it would continually be taxed if a private landowner buys it.
Mr. Chairman. Todd, is there any benefit to doing any more advertising? I mean, it sounds like are we gonna get any more interest by doing more advertising?
I think we'd be hard pressed to really spend many more dollars out there to try to garner new interest in it. I mean, the advertising that was out there, the interest now because of the story, because of the wheels that are under this thing, I think there's probably a pretty good cross section. Obviously, doing the legal, the required, we can certainly get it onto different internet sites that are inexpensive and certainly plan to do that. We'll revamp our flyer that we did. It's just a simple change of date and time and those kind of things. So, really, I think we can probably do a lot of it pretty effectively with what's already in place and what's already out there.
Probably get front page journal news again, so.
I think if we can get
He's not here.
Sitting out there grinning.
the eyes of,
I mean, I don't have
Eyes of
any
the county.
objection giving us some money if, I mean, $500 or $1,000.
I think somewhere between 500 and 1,000 if we felt it was prudent to get that out there. And certainly though the statewide classified ad, that's like $300, but that catches all the different papers around the state. And there's a couple of outlets, that we can certainly get into that are inexpensive. And I guess just from the reiteration of the legal standpoint, we'd want to put something into the Rapid City Journal so that we've got that county paper of record, not only with the legal advertising, but some display advertising too. So certainly there would be a few dollars in cost, but somewhere in that 500 to 1,000 range will certainly cut it.
I'd make a motion to allow up to $1,000 in advertising for the sale.
I second that motion.
Is that all you need then, Jim? We have a motion and a second to allow $1,000 advertising for the second sale. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Next item is the Rushmore Regional Rail Authority. Mr. Snow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rest of the commission. I previously had submitted, looks like you have copies of that. I was going to show it up here, but we don't have to. I guess for the benefit of the viewing public, it might be helpful. Is that all I have to do? Okay, while this is firing up, let me give you a few comments preceding the presentation. First, a disclaimer. I am not a subject matter expert on rail authorities, but I'm quickly learning. I think this can be a very powerful tool for our region. I know there are bona fide subject matter experts. There are a couple in the room here today, but also at the state level, the Department of Transportation, Mr. Bruce Lindholm has volunteered to help us as we find our way if we want to move forward in creating something like this out here in the Black Hills. And then the second item I wanted to mention is the fact that this is a tool that should be looked at in the proper context. And so as the president of the Rapid City Economic Development Partnership, I am always looking for new tools that we can use. We're currently exploring the possibility of creating a foreign trade zone, for example. In West River, we currently don't have that. We're trying to gin up enough interest from existing importers and exporters to demonstrate or validate that we would benefit from having a dedicated customs officer in West River as part of a foreign trade zone. So the creation of a regional rail authority, you have to understand from my perspective, is really a big picture. How do we develop a toolbox that has more tools in it? So first, the name. There's no magic to this name. There is no legal entity. There's no such entity that exists that's called the Rushmore Regional Rail Authority. That's just to get us thinking about what an entity like this that I'm about to describe could be called. We could name it anything. There is legal basis on which to create these regional rail authorities. As you can see here, per state statute, the South Dakota State Railroad Board, which already exists, may, upon the written approval of the governor, make loans from the Railroad Trust Fund to regional rail authorities upon such terms and conditions as the State Railroad Board may determine. The creation of a regional rail authority. The Railroad Authority is created and incorporated under the provisions of this chapter, which is 49-17A, as a political subdivision of the state to exercise thereunder a part of the sovereign power of the state, just like you would create any other political subdivision. And then here's the why. The purpose of the authority would be to create a legal entity or conduit in which the state rail trust funds can be lent to businesses. This is authorized by the governor. It would fund construction of rail spurs to drive more development of rail-served industrial parks and projects, which will translate into good year-round jobs in our region. And at this point, we're exploring the possibility of creating another tool. Any action that the commission makes today does not compel or obligate the county or its taxpayers to anything at this point. Simply what we're looking for is a thumbs up to continue the exploration of the creation of this regional rail authority. There is precedence. There are over 27 entities already in South Dakota that are classified as regional rail authorities. They're pass-through taxing entities organized for the purpose of lending the state rail trust funds. And their purpose has to be related to railroad infrastructure. And it has to happen within the taxing district that the authority is created under. There needs to be a minimum of 2 taxing political subdivisions. I've already talked to Rapid City's Legal and Finance. That's gone before the full council, and they have given us the green light to continue talking to a partner. I've also reached out to Box Elder. I've talked to their planning commission, subsequently talked to the full city council in Box Elder, and we've received a green light from Box Elder. So we've reached our threshold of 2, but I feel like it's really important that Pennington County be a part of this if it moves forward. So I'm here today inviting Pennington County to participate with us as this moves forward. The authority has the option of levying tax from either or any of the political subdivisions in the event of a loan default, and I'll walk you through an example here in just a moment. To date, it's important to note that no rail authority has exercised its taxing authority to recover any delinquent loans. All of the authorities have spurred economic development in the form of these low-interest loans provided by the State Rail Board. And the loans benefit rail infrastructure associated with projects that export goods that are manufactured in South Dakota. There are currently 3 rail authorities in West River, although none of these include Rapid City, Box Elder, or Pennington County. So there's a bit of a donut hole from my perspective. And the purpose that, the reason I'm advocating for this is really for industrial development. These other examples I've given here, the Northern Hills, it was sort of dubbed the Dun Rail project back when Kevin Costner was wanting to do this route from the airport. Many folks who are here may remember that. It was more of a tourism play to get folks from the airport up to Deadwood. And they didn't have any taxing authority, but their purpose was to acquire land in order to generate this route going from the airport up there. So that project has since, it still exists, it's still a legal entity, but they haven't done a whole lot of development. Most recently, up in conjunction with a industrial park west of Belfouche, Butte County and Belfouche created an authority. I don't know what they're calling that. I don't know what the name of it is, but that just happened a couple of months ago. And the purpose for them is similar to what I'm asking, is to spur industrial development along rail-served sites. And then the final example is one that's mostly based as an agricultural use, and it includes 3 counties that are East River and 3 counties that are West River. And that one's known as the Mitchell Rapid City Regional Rail Authority. That dates back 25 years or so. Okay, so the mechanics of how this tool would work is Rapid City and or Pennington County and Box Elder would join forces to create this legal entity that we can name whatever we want. In this case, we've called it the Rushmore Regional Rail Authority. And therefore, you have the conduit. Separate from that, you have prospective companies. And let me just back up for just a moment. There are several companies that I have talked to this year where the idea of having rail service is key to their business. One ended up not using it. It's a plastics company that's ended up going on the north end of Rapid City. Their ideal location would have been to locate on a rail spur. They gave me some examples of other markets where they have plants where they are right on the rail because they bring resin beads in from the refinery coast primarily. And ideally, they would bring those right to the site, and then they would melt the beads down to create this extruded pipe. That's one example. In other markets that they have been in, they have benefited from having proximity directly onto a rail. Certainly, we didn't have a rail authority created, so that wouldn't have worked here. But that was, as I would like to put it, another informant in this process. Since that time, I've also been out to the what's known as the transload facility out in Box Elder. That was probably, maybe a year or so ago to learn about that development. And I think there's a lot of promise there for developing infrastructure there that could prove as a big boon to this region and creating some industrial employment. And there are several others that I've talked to since this has been starting to make some headlines as a possible tool. And I expect to see more of that if and when this moves forward. Okay, so getting us back to this notion then. There are prospective companies who may have need for rail infrastructure. They can apply to the regional, actually they apply to the State Rail Board for these funds. But if there's no lending entity as a go-between, then nothing will happen. In this example here, they would make application to the State Rail Board. They would allocate those funds, the governor would sign a resolution, the funds are loaned to the Regional Rail Authority, who subsequently loans those funds to the end company. And that's how the money would end up in the hands of those companies to develop their rail infrastructure. Here's an example. A typical loan amount would be on the low end, say $300,000, upwards of millions of dollars. But just to give you an example, if someone wanted to create a switch and a spur or two coming into their site, you're probably looking at a $300,000 to $400,000 spend for that. Typical loan terms would be 15 years at 2% interest. So the annual payments, fully amortized over 15 years, you're going to be around $30,000 in this example. State Railroad Board funds the Rushmore Rail Authority. The company co-signs on the loan agreement between the State Rail Board and the Regional Rail Authority, and then the Regional Rail Authority loans the funds to the company to complete the rail-related infrastructure project. In the event of a default, what happens, and I used the example as I was talking to the city and well, actually both cities, of a parent who co-signs on a loan with their child. If the child does not make that loan payment, then whoever co-signed on the loan has to make the loan payment. The entire amount of the loan is not forward and immediately due. It's just making sure that the state trust knows that those annual payments are going to be made. As a possible method of governance, it's just thoughts. There's nothing that binds anyone to this, but if it was a two-party agreement, I would suggest that there be adequate representation from both bodies. So if there's a 7-member board, and if Pennington County and Rapid City and Box Elder all want to join forces in creating this authority, you could set up a structure where you have 2 representatives from each of those governing bodies, and then perhaps a third-party appointed banking or finance professional to help with vetting projects to see if they would be able to pass the test of getting loans or not. There's the liability on the individuals on the Board of Commissioners is none. There is no liability because you're creating a separate legal jurisdiction. The board meets as needed or once a year as suggested here, and any information that comes in from loan applicants has to be reviewed and approved by this new board, this new body that's created. And then finally, before I open it up for any questions that you might have, as I look at the area that would be impacted by this, I see several corridors that could be huge beneficiaries of this in driving economic development, driving industrial development. And it goes out, of course, towards Box Elder, up the I-90 corridor into Meade County, and on the southern end of town, where the Canadian Pacific Rail currently comes in. There is right-of-way along Highway 44 out by the airport, although that essentially the railroad tracks have been abandoned, but there is still right-of-way out there. So that's another possibility. And that could be interesting as we start looking at foreign trade zone and a convergence of multiple transportation methods. If rail was introduced with the air and truck, that provides a really interesting possibility as we look forward as well. With that, I will open it up to any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Ben, if Pennington County is not a part of this, then the funds, the loan funds could only be spent in, let's say if Box Elder and Rapid City went, it would be only in those 2 municipalities.
Correct.
So, I mean, that would really limit where this growth could take place if there is growth or if there was some need for rail spurs.
Yeah, that's true. And as you well know, if cities continue to annex property, of course, then that falls under that same jurisdiction. So.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Ben, I find your map difficult to read. Could you point out where you don't really have an idea where the rail will go or what?
These green zones, as highlighted here,
That's
simply
all.
reflect where current rail lines or rail right-of-way currently exists today. So this could have just as well been a map that shows in bright green the rail lines that come in and out of Rapid City. That's essentially what this is designed to show.
So none of that decision has been made yet. You don't really know where it's going to go.
No.
Mr. Chair, I have lots of questions. Do you mind? Or would you
Go
rather
ahead,
not?
go ahead. Well, actually, yeah, go ahead with a couple of your questions at least.
Okay, 1 and 2 I'll pick. You know, when we've talked about this before, Ben, to be quite honest, the great concern that I have is the liability if there is a default. I'm not real comfortable with that at all, because even though I know we say there haven't been any defaults to this point, it really is dependent on the location of those other authorities. And I mean, and one of the things I noticed here is that one of the Western South Dakota authorities has a serious rehabilitation issue. Well, what that's really saying is, if I'm reading this right, is that nobody's kept up the lines and they're not usable. So then who's responsible for that? Is that where taxation would come in of our taxpayers?
No, that's not my understanding. As far as you're talking about the infrastructure of the overall system, of a failing
Because
system.
If you look at the Mitchell Rapid City Regional, it says it's needs serious rehabilitation.
Yeah, I wonder if I can call Dan. You used to sit on this board at the state level, and I don't want to put Dan on the spot, but just to provide a little bit, and I wish Bruce was here riding shotgun with me today, because he has a lot of history with some of these other authorities. That's not my understanding, is that that's not created for upkeep of the overall system. The system here that we're dealing with is, of course, the former DM&E lines, which have now been, it's now wholly owned unit of the Canadian Pacific Railroad. So I don't know that that's, the example of the Mitchell to Rapid City might not have much bearing on what we're trying to create here.
I know, but my point is, what happens if
Canadian Pacific abandons this region?
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at down the road liability, and I'm very concerned that the taxation issue is something that I'm not really interested in.
Well, isn't the taxation only on if that rail authority defaults on a loan that has been given to a company? And it's not for the maintenance and upkeep of, it's not the taxing authority for the maintenance and upkeep of the line.
Correct.
However, logically, if you are not maintaining a line, you've gotten a loan, why are you paying that loan for a line you have not kept up? I mean, to me,
I think if I can restate Commissioner Troutman's concern, it's if something beyond our control, for example, an entire line going defunct. So if there's a company that got a loan based on that being part of their business model, is that they had access to rail line, and beyond their control, that system falls into disrepair, and therefore they would default on their loan because they don't have trains coming into their property. Am I understanding your concern?
It can be a whole circle here.
I don't know.
I'm going to relinquish the chair so that I can make a speech. The law that's in place right now is 25 years old. It was put together in the passion and heat of the argument about whether we had a railroad or not. It's time that it's looked at again, because it does not efficiently address the problem of transportation needs, and there's no reason in the world why local entities should stand between a state trust fund and the person to whom the loan is being made. And I would encourage you to work with our local legislators and cause an evaluation to be done on the current law, restructure it, and put it in place so that we recognize that the State Department of Transportation includes effective and efficient rail service as part of their responsibility. There's no need for a person paying real estate tax to stand responsible for something that they have no part of other than through their elected bodies. I would encourage you to work in a direction to straighten some of that out.
Mr. Chairman, whoever that may be.
Are you done?
I'm done.
I relinquish the chair back to you.
All I can say is amen. I said it before when we've looked at this, that I will never vote for it, and as long as they have a taxing authority for default loans. And you can put in the proposal to the state that that taxing authority is not there. And I guarantee you, the state won't stand behind this either. Until they have absolute positive proof that the county will pick up any mistakes and pay for them, the state's not going to do it, and I think they need to. But I have no problem with going ahead and taking a look at this, and seeing what happens, but that's my thoughts only.
Looking forward on that basis, is that a motion?
I don't have a problem sitting down with the other two entities, and I'll make that motion to, for you to appoint somebody here to sit down with the other two entities and Ben and see if we can come up with some better solution.
And as they say, the devil is in the detail. There's no commitment being made other than if you wanted to continue the negotiations that I anticipate happening between Rapid City and Box Elder, and you're being invited to those.
That's what you're looking for
Yes,
now.
that's right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and was there someone who wished to comment? Or?
I think Julie.
Yes, Julie?
In listening to this, I'm glad that you pointed out that the statutes are 25 years old. From the taxation part of it, which I am very concerned with, it seems odd to me that just by simple resolution, without referable, without the ability to refer it, you are possibly placing a tax on your taxpayers within Pennington County. He indicated that the area also went over into Meade. We don't have a legal description for this railroad authority. So if we're doing work and loaning money into Meade County, why should Pennington County property taxes be paid for it? That's not been addressed. And I guess I don't know if there was a default under the current tax statutes, if that would be an automatic opt-out so that we could levy that tax against our people. And without any referral capabilities by the taxpayers, I think it's taxation without representation. Even though it's never happened, I think we have to be able to assure our taxpayers that their due process in creating this and the possibility of default comes back to exactly who. Because you are creating a taxing district, which through any other parts of the law, when you want to create it, you have to get signatures from the taxpayer or the proposed landowners and voters. It has to be a 25% petition signed to even indicate it to go to a vote of the people. And I don't see that anywhere in the paperwork that's been provided. And I think it's right along your same concerns. It's good it looks good on paper, but I don't trust, no offense, the state to back it up. They put stuff off on the counties all the time. So I think there's a lot of taxation questions that I have that I don't think have been answered, whether other counties and cities have done it. I just doubt its legality.
Thank you. We have this gentleman. Did you wish to comment, sir?
This is, my name is Lon Hubbard, by the way. I live in Rapid City, resident. Have a minor little business out at Box Elder. It's called Black Hills Transload. This is a tremendous concept. 6 years ago, when I thought of it, I tried to get some cooperation. I came to the county. County commissioners at that time supported it. We built the transload. And one of the reasons we built the transload was because of the complaints. Well, first of all, it's the place where it should be, but the traffic complaints in Rapid City with the rail traffic. There are 4 green plots on that map. The one to the north and west generally referred to as the Somerset Corridor. The Canadian Pacific Railroad would just as soon not go there. The one to the extreme southeast is 79 Highway, where Dakota Craft used to be. And you have to go through what we call the yard to get there. The one out on 44 is the old abandoned road bed. It was said, actually, it's owned by the state. They were going to use that for a bicycle path to the extent of about $5.7 million, so the 3 people that bicycle to Kadoka from Rapid a year could utilize it. And then you have this little corridor to the north and east. No traffic would come into Rapid if it goes to the north and east. It's Box Elder. Any traffic that you see in Rapid City or west of Rapid City, because all rail comes from either the south through Crawford, Dakota Junction, on the BNSF to the DM&E and up to Rapid, or from the east. When you come from the east, once you cut Elkvale, which is the underpass, you cut 17 highways or roadways in Rapid City to get to the terminal. If you're going west, you cut 11 more roads, some of which are the same, going west. You cannot go from east of Rapid to west of Rapid without going through the yard. You used to bypass the yard, which is down on 79 Highway. There is only one logical facility or area for this rail terminal, a transload, a multimodal, intermodal to be, and that is to the east of Rapid to prevent the traffic. Canadian Pacific Railroad will not bring hazardous material cars through this corridor. 17 crossings to get to the yard, 11 to get out, or 17 to go if you're going back east again. There's no restrictions to the east. The reason I'm up here is not to defend my own project. It's just typical. You've got Box Elder, which the rail park has been annexed into Box Elder, and water is being put into that facility only because it's going to the new treatment facility, which is the Box Elder. What do you call that? I call it the brown trout pond, but the recycling facility. But here we go with Rapid City going to form a rail authority and to be, and there was a chart up here earlier about 7 members on ad nauseum, and I can appreciate all that. But it's Box Elder, and it's the individual, and it's Pennington County. And to put a layer of people over private enterprise, which is certainly west of where any of the activity will ever be, it is, to me, nonsensical. The bentonite plants west and north of Rapid are down on volume. GCC is down on volume. There is a move afoot which I don't see the 2 individuals here right now, to develop that Box Elder facility into a truly I'll say it one more time, multi-million-dollar facility. Senator Thune, Congresswoman Nome, Secretary Ray LaHood, since we have we have the same president, he is still going to be on board. United States Secretary of Transportation have reviewed it. Just the transload not what we call a multimodal aspect, is $23 million additional in Pennington County and in Box Elder. I've only got about 23 years experience with the railroad. Never worked for one. Worked with them. I talk daily with the Canadian Pacific at the VP level. Box Elder and Pennington County need to look at this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
If I might, I'm not, as you know, the discussion the last time around, I wasn't really, well, I wouldn't mind it, period, because I figured Pennington County was in deep trouble if we got involved. But that problem's been taken care of. But I would like to see the county participate with Rapid City and Box Elder to the tune of looking into this to see where it's going to go. And by that time, maybe the legislative session will be in session and we can get the legislature to straighten this mess out. And that could take Pennington County and Box Elder, Rapid City out of it entirely at that time, or it may put us all back in the game. But I really believe, as Commissioner Troutman and others have stated, that, and you stated so eloquently, that comes from experience, that the state needs to stand behind their own problems. And I think Auditor Pearson said this very right thing. The state really likes to put problems off on the counties and cities that they don't have to handle. And it's great if they can push things through and spend our money. As you can see it, and the judge is sitting here, but I shouldn't say that out, but just to give him a warning that I want to say it. We're building this whole new $40 million complex over here because the state decided that the courts ought to have this whole building. So I think we got to watch it.
Commissioner Holloway.
Well, I'm going to support the motion to look at this further, and frankly, I think this is a good idea. I mean, on one hand, people say, boy, we'd like to have better jobs and more industrial here. And what I see this being is it's not us trying to solve the state's problem, it's us trying to provide local development. And, you know, this board would review any application for a loan. So if we don't think it's a good, viable loan or business plan, don't approve the damn loan. But you know, it just seems to me like anytime somebody wants to do some development and try to create more jobs and higher paying jobs, then we can find all these reasons why we should stick our head in the sand and continue what we've been doing for the last 100 years. So I think you got a good idea, Ben, and hope you can put it together.
Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. And again, I'm going to say I'm not necessarily totally against it, and I'm surely not totally for it. And I think we ought to proceed down the line, and if we can get the legislature to go the route that maybe needs to be. But when we talked about that committee to approve these loans, we talked about 2 people from Rapid City Council or the mayor, 2 people from the Box Elder Council or the mayor, and 2 people from Pennington County, and 1 loan officer from Rapid City. So right away, we're outvoted if it comes to that. So I think we need to do a lot of looking at a lot of things.
And we can put 7 loan officers on there if we want to.
Correct. I feel I should at least be clear. If the county commissioners authorize continued discussions about this, everything would be in play. All of the concerns that have been talked about today, there is no preset template here. I merely presented those as examples of a way that the structure might look should all 3 entities join forces in creating this authority. I would recommend if this is approved, at least to continue the dialogue about it, that my next step would be to reach out to the chair of the county commission, each of the respective mayors, of those two cities, and between the three, then invite others from their respective boards so that they're not violating quorum rules. I would suggest a couple of county commissioners and a couple from each of the other bodies who would be appointed by the chair and or mayors to at least have that initial conversation about what it might look like. And at that point, any of the parties, they all may decide this is a horrible idea, forget it. That's fine. Or one party may decide they don't want to participate, and that's fine.
Are you going to do anything as far as the taxation concerns that we have legislatively?
That's a big hill to climb to change the state law in order to the whole way this has worked for these other 27. We'd be basically telling the state, look, our entities aren't going to participate. We can't get two of our entities to participate on the basis of that concern. So I know a lot of those folks, and I'll be happy to talk to them and let them know, share the concerns that have come from Pennington County at least. And there may be other concerns that come from the Box Elder and Rapid City folks. And if that's the case, we'll continue to noodle it and see if we can get it to get those concerns addressed. If not, it will follow the same as all the other authorities, or the recently approved Butte County and Belle Fourche, which went through pretty quick, from my understanding, without a lot of concern, and they were more excited about getting the industrial development to happen, and this opens up another tool. It provides those regional rail authorities access to a pool of money that they currently do not have. That's basically what it does.
Mr. Chairman, one last thing. Now, where does the money come from in the South Dakota Rail Authority? Where's that money come from? Anybody know?
The history of that,
Just
I believe it was from
who
the
funds-
sale, when the state owned portions of the railroad in the state. They sold it, and that they seeded this fund with those proceeds.
It's, I think I have to agree with Commissioner Holloway that it's kind of for the benefit of the counties if you get, and the cities, tax structure, if you get some large-scale operations going, and we can tax them. I just have my major problem and hurdle is that what these people want is a low-interest loan, which the taxpayers are probably picking up the difference in the percentage, and then if they fail, the taxpayers are going to pay it off. I guess, George, you want a loan like that? Yeah. Sounds like a heck of a deal. But, I know it's never happened before, and trouble is, in this country right now, there's a lot of things happening that have never happened before. And,
But,
Mr. Chair,
Ron,
again, if I might, Ben, you of all people know where I stand on the railroads, and I think we've talked flat out about it. I think that this country needs its railroads back. So don't anybody get me wrong that I'm against this because of the railroad or anything else. I want to make sure that the Pennington County taxpayers aren't on the hook for things. But here, Mr. Hubbard left, but the gentleman sitting right over here, and I was on the commission back when we supported his actions. But the problem is, we supported his actions with his money. And that's why he got up and I think and said what he did. And he's done a good job out there with that transload on his money. So if we can work this out, well, I got no problem. But the only thing that I want to see is that I don't want to see non-elected officials take over the use of taxpayers' money that don't have to stand up and in front of anybody and say, we did it. They point at the county commission and say, they did it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Sir?
Good morning. My name is Dan Baker. I'm a citizen of Pennington County, and as Ben mentioned, I am on the State Rail Board, but I appear here today as a taxpayer in Pennington County. And on this issue, I think that it's fair to say that there's a lot more that you don't know than what you know. And I would ask that you take the time to study this, look at the process and be able to make some informed decisions. These loans are made with taxpayers' money. It's owned by the taxpayers of South Dakota. It's a fund that was created by the sale of rail lines. As current rail loans pay off, the money goes back into the fund, so it revolves. In this state, there's a lot more demand for this money than there is money. So we have no problem finding people to our regional rail authorities to utilize this money in an economic development sense. And I think Commissioner Holloway is right. You don't have to take the money. Every loan stands on its own individually, but you do have to have a vehicle in place currently to access that money, unless, as Commissioner Peterson says, they change the law. But I would support the idea of creating this vehicle, having the wheels on it, and then making individual decisions whether or not you want to access that money to support people that want to develop economic development. And but I think it would be good to have Bruce Lindholm out here to go through every step of the process so you understand exactly how it works and why for people like Ben, this is another tool. Right now, they're talking about this regional rail authority as a wagon they want to pull with this vehicle, but there's a lot of other wagons you could hook onto that individually. So with that, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And just the thought was thrown out there, well, geez, let's let the state, why should the county have to get in the middle of this, and let's just let the state do it? Well, frankly, I don't have a lot of confidence in the state of funding projects in Pennington County if we're competing with the 2/3 of the population that live east of the James River. So I think it was structured this way so that local governments or local people could have some say in saying, this is a good project for our area. Let's support it. Let's get behind it and make it happen.
Okay, anything else? If not, those in favor of the motion to proceed to continue participating in this process, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Julie, we're an hour late, but you're on deck. And just to remind the public, we pulled item 20A, and that was, will that be placed on a future agenda, or do you want to talk about it?
It will come forward only in a different format and a different fund. Yep. What you have before you today on 20B is a budget supplement hearing for the general fund emergency management budget. And the letter is attached from Dustin Willett, our emergency management director, informing the board that they have done a public warning siren repair throughout the Pennington County constellation, as they refer to it. It was a critical project. It was extensive, expensive, and unplanned, and they're requesting the board to supplement the emergency management from our new wording of restricted fund balance, which is our cash balance in the emergency management fund. The motion needed is to approve the supplement to the 2012 Emergency Management Fund budget in the amount of $22,000 from the restricted fund balance in the Emergency Management Fund. So it will not affect county general
So moved.
reserves.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Does anyone from the public wish to comment?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
A little later down the road here in the meeting, we have a talk on our contingency money. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't talk about both of these in the same light. But wouldn't contingency pay for this? If
Emergency
they wanted to-
management is a special revenue fund, and it gathers funds from city, county, and the federal government, and so that's the basis of where the money's coming from. Contingency is taxed and levied under county general. So the city, if you took it out of county general, the city and the feds would not be paying their portion.
And this is, the fund that it's coming from can only be used
For
For
this
any-
type of
for
expenses,
this kind of
yes. It's a
stuff.
very restricted fund.
Anything further?
Okay. Nope.
Hearing no further comment? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. Before you start on item C, I heard lots of compliments about the way your election crew was organized and the way they performed.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yes, we got a really good group of temporary help that came in, and it was a learning experience for all of them, because they've not been in that function before. So what I have before you today is the canvas of the 2012 general election results. What I'm handing out is your complimentary copy of the general of the general election held on November 6th. The specific canvas report that we sent into the state looks quite a bit different than that. It's by precinct, it's by candidate, it's by issue, and that's what we'll send in and are required to send in. The election scanning went relatively well. We had a few issues with our America's Way precinct, which we'll be dealing with in a completely different way on any subsequent elections. Other than that, the scanners ran relatively well. We actually were done counting except for one ballot at 10 p.m., which was very early for us on a general election. And then that one ballot caused us havoc throughout, and we finally got it figured out by about 11 o'clock, so we could send in our final results. So I have a certification that I need to have you sign that basically says you, listed individually, the County Board of Canvassers in Pennington County for the general election held on November 6, 2012, hereby certify that the foregoing is a true abstract of the votes cast in the jurisdiction of Pennington County, South Dakota, at the election as shown by the return certified to the person in charge of the election. So I'll pass that around. If you could all sign that and make that motion.
Do we have a motion?
You do, Mr. Chair.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to place our signatures on the certification of the election. Any discussion?
Julie, what was the problem with you said there was problems with the mailbox or something?
America's Way, yes.
What was the difficulty?
Well, there is a big confusion and difference in what America Way has informed us their services is and their services actually are. We had America's Way is our largest #1 address that we mail absentee ballots to. Those ballots went out to American mailboxes on September 22nd. We had a huge number of those. We had a number of those people requesting ballots from us that we had mailed to America's Way. In talking to America's Way, they don't forward that mail until it's requested. So we have ballots sitting out there. They all fill their application out for the entire year, and we had ballots sitting at America's Way that they couldn't or wouldn't forward. And it created the extra work that we had to create a second ballot. It depleted our ballot stock. And therefore, we were running ballots out to the remainder of the precincts or the voters on Election Day. So we're going to have to at least double our ballot stock to the number of voters in that precinct in the future.
Well, is the voter putting down that mailbox?
Yes.
But then when they're calling later, they're wanting it sent to a different
Send it
address?
to a different address. We can't pull that one back from America's Way. And farther down into the process, we told them that they needed to contact America's Way because the first ballot had been sent out to have their mail forwarded. So it's not working well for us in the ballot area. We can't put a note in the ballot to the America's Ways people because they're not getting their ballot to say you have to request your ballot. So there's no way for us to have any conversation with those voters that this service is not providing your ballots in an adequate manner.
Sounds like it's a individual's problem more so than, I mean, if
Yes, they don't
they're
understand
doing
their
business with
service.
somebody that's not forwarded in their mail, it sounds like
Yes.
it'd be their problem. not
But you may
ours.
start hearing complaints that we're going to request that they contact America's Way and use the service that they're already providing rather than issuing second ballots out.
Mr. Chairman. Yes. I know I'm probably the only one that believes this, and I know Janet will disagree, but perhaps it's time that we just let South Dakota people vote in South Dakota elections. That's a novel thought, I know, but
And isn't supported by the federal government or the state legislature, so.
Any further discussion on the motion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Also, we need the board to approve certain election day related expenses so that we can release those checks. They go for salaries of $38,294.78. That is for the precinct boards, as well as the absentee ballot board, the recreation board, and the staff that works at night. The rent for the polling places of $830. The travel expenses, we pay travel expenses for the precinct workers to come to school, the superintendents to pay, to pick up their ballot supplies and to return the ballots on election night. That's $1,855.98. And utilities of $380. That is a combination of the superintendent's cell phone that we rent for the day, as well as there's a couple polling places that we actually have to put in, that we've put in landlines and have an actual landline phone opened and shut on election day. And so I need approval to release those checks today in those amounts. And Karen has those.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the release of those election fund expenses.
Is there a second?
second.
Motion and a second to approve the release of the checks for election expenses. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, for clarity, we have this in the budget already to
Yes.
handle this, and it has been pre-approved, so we didn't have to have that on the agenda today along with your canvas to send those checks out, because it's not on the agenda. I don't want anybody raising a fuss about that.
It's the same thing as we produce vouchers every commission week, every commission meeting.
Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
You got the sign sheet right
Items
there.
from the treasurer.
Good morning, again. I put this in resolution form on these charges. These are charges that we have done in the past, and in speaking with the Division of Motor Vehicles, they just asked me if I had it in a resolution. I did have a documentation from June 6, 2008, where it was approved by the county commissioners for the one resolution. So it's really pretty simple. I'd just like it entered into the minutes as a resolution by a motion from the commissioners. If you have any questions?
Yes, I have one of Jay. Since we've been doing this since June of 2008, is it appropriate to have a resolution nunc-pro-tunc to June of 2008
What was that big
instead of
word?
today's date? Hey, that's what we get paid big money for, is to use those big words.
You want to say it again?
That no one else understands, including us. Well, we've been doing it, and are there going to be any repercussions because we theoretically, and it wasn't a resolution, it was a motion? Can we backdate the resolution?
I don't see why not, and particularly this is a request directly from Department of Motor Vehicles. Their request was to simply put what you're doing in the form of a resolution for their purposes, so.
And maybe it doesn't make any difference, I don't know.
Well, the resolution is going to be dated today's date.
Yeah, but we can,
But it says to the very last paragraph, now therefore, continue to charge the 25 administrative fee as set forth by motion of the board effective July 1, 2008. So it's just to continue to do what you already had set in place.
But this one is not. This
Sure.
one just says that we continue.
Right.
my motion is to pass the Pennington County resolution for the establishment of fees charged by the treasurer's office.
Is there a second?
And the chairman's signature, which I think is already part of it.
Second.
Okay, now, is it appropriate that we cover both resolutions?
There's two resolutions. So which one are you, Ron? Are you
Well,
making a motion for both of
I'll make a
them?
motion for both of them. I was just gonna do one at a time. but
Oh,
If we wanna do
okay.
both of them,
Fine.
fine.
It'd probably be best if you do one at a time.
Okay,
And so mine is, first one is for the establishment of the fees.
And that's my second.
and that's the second, that's on the first resolution in your packet.
Yes.
And is there any further discussion? This relates to long-distance calls, research for property, and responding by mail, and researching back taxes. So that's the motion, or the resolution we're addressing in this motion. Secretary, okay with that? Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Second resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for the establishment of a $25 fee for title services charged by the Pennington County Treasurer.
Second.
Moved and seconded on the $25 fee resolution. Any further discussion on that? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank
Make a
you.
motion to take a 10-minute recess.
Second.
Moved and seconded to take a 10-minute recess.
It's time.
You want to discuss it for 10 minutes? Back to order. And we'll start with item 22A, buildings and, or PC campus expansion.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mike Cool with Buildings and Grounds. I have a couple items in regard to the project, and I have an updated handout I'd like to give to you. As I said, I have a couple of items for you this morning in regard to the campus expansion project. The project continues to proceed very well. We're very happy with the quality of the work that's going on, and the project remains under budget, and it appears we're still going to be ahead of schedule when it finishes up. One of the sheets, the first item I have for you is, as always, is a part of a construction project. We do have some change orders, and this is the first change order we have. The top sheet that I gave you now is we found a error or in regard to one item. The two items I have highlighted on there, the grout color change and the precast finish. item. The grout color change was actually included in that precast connection, or the precast finish change before, so we had to delete that. So we deleted $757 out of the project, and I just wanted you to have that corrected information for this presentation. So we are looking at, this is the first change order. All these items have been thoroughly reviewed and discussed, and we're looking at a change order of $14,436.63 and an additional 18 days to the construction time frame.
Now, Mike, do we need a motion to authorize that, or?
Yes, I am looking for the authorization for the chair's signature to this change order. And I've provided a suggested motion there. If there's any questions I can answer, I certainly will.
Are you folks that are on the building committee familiar with this?
Yep.
And do you recommend it?
Believe me, it's blood, sweat, and tears every meeting trying to determine whether it's the right thing to do or not.
So what you're looking for is a motion to approve this change order?
Correct.
So move, as presented.
Is there a second?
Does that include the chair's signature on it too, Ken? Okay. All right, I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Dan Richer. On this change order, I just curious, we didn't get a copy or anything on why it was requested, why the change order was requested, because the explanation, I don't, just a finish, just change the finish?
It's actually a combination of a number of smaller items that have been traditionally, the way we handle change orders is as the project moves along, instead of doing a change order for any small issue, a modification, we collect those and then issue one change order for them all. But you can see that they're relatively small in size generally, and there's a lot of additions and subtractions in terms of.
Well, I guess the next question I'd have then is, whose mistake was this? Was it the architect's mistake, or was it the county's mistake, or?
Mr. Chair, I think I can answer that.
Yes, go ahead.
When you build a building of this magnitude, there's a lot of different components to it. And so when you come across something that needs to be adjusted, it's really not somebody's mistake. It's just part of the process. I mean, this whole change order for all of these items, and this deals mainly with the evidence and energy plan, amounts to $14,436. We set money aside when we started the project, anticipating that there's going to be some changes. They've all been reviewed. They've all been determined by the building committee to be valid requests. But I guess, having been on several of these building projects, and in particular with this one, you know, I think the architects and the engineers and the people that's been working on it have done a good job. And really, if we can get by with small change orders like this, I think it'll speak well for the project.
I guess the only place, the thing I'm concerned with is, you know, it's a change order request is either you want something, the customer wants a change in whatever color or whatever,
or the architect or engineer has made a mistake. It's like, if the architect or engineer has made a mistake, then I don't think the Pennington County taxpayer should be making that payment. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Mr. Chair. Would be my suggestion that if a guy needs to question these items, that you probably ought to attend the building committee meetings, and they're available at what time on the Tuesdays generally. And that'll give us all.
They're on the same days as commission meetings at 3 o'clock, and they are open meetings. Mr. Chairman, that's why you guys are elected, to ask these questions. And I don't know if you've asked them, because this was never put in the public.
Absolutely, we have asked them, and go to,
I don't need to go to every meeting to ask a question.
Sure. Either I or Nancy are at those building committee meetings, and I can assure you that we go over these very, very closely.
That's all I was asking.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next item.
The next item is a committee recommendation in regard to authorization for some additional design services with ARC International. This is related to the procurement of evidence equipment for the building. It is we're asking for approval on a contract. It's for $47,500. This is something that was not included in the original contract with ARC International to do this work. They have provided a lot of this work to us, and are not able to just absorb it. So we are, as a committee, the committee is recommending that we authorize an agreement with them for this amount. And since there's been there has been a lot of committee discussion about this particular item, that's why it is coming to the commission as a recommendation at this time, so that we can be correct in how in our procedure in executing it. So at this time, as I understand it, for a committee recommendation, we need to present it at one meeting, and then the action will be taken at the next committee meeting or commission meeting for it. Are there any questions I could?
Mr. Chairman,
So, yes.
I have to have a better explanation than, well, they did some of it, and now they can't absorb it, and so we're gonna give them $50,000.
The construction project, or the design of that we signed with ARC International, was for design of the building. These are items that we're putting into the building, but they're important that they integrate with the systems of the building. So they had to be procured on a very quick basis, so that we could coordinate the installation of some of the systems in the building. I had asked Donovan Broger, actually kind of pushed him to help us out with getting this stuff procured, and he had tried to do that, and wanted to do that in terms of a simultaneous bid for the equipment and the construction of the building. The way that the information for the equipment came together from the evidence building staff, there were a lot of decisions about what was going to be utilized in the building that came from them. At that time, when we were getting ready to go out to bid, it looked like we had holes in that information yet, and we were concerned about the cost it would be to purchase it at that time. So we held off on bidding the equipment at that time, went down, pushed it back into actually early spring. In that time, they went through another redesign in terms of what equipment would be placed in that through some additional meetings. So they actually ended up with even more time involved with this work. So they've got a substantial amount of time and money invested in helping us out with this. Actually, the amount probably they've expended is probably closer to $77,000. But this is what they have indicated they can live with.
I'm not sure I understand it yet, but if I guess, our building people say it's appropriate, I'll vote for it.
Just something to maybe clear it up just a little bit. This all had to do with the evidence building equipment, the equipment that will be processing evidence and storing it. So we did not, we'd had to pay somebody to figure it out. There were a lot of changes coming through the evidence staff, and it was very involved, and certainly on a county city level, we did not have the understanding of how that should be all put together. By bidding it out this way, and Mike, I can't remember what the amount of money was we saved by doing it, by having it locally consulted, rather than bringing in a consultant from somewhere else to handle this.
I think Donovan thinks that we've saved in the neighborhood of $200,000.
Yes, I knew it was a
by
considerable
the additional work we've done.
And keep in mind, this is a split building, so all the city of Rapid City is responsible for 60% of this.
And is this all part of our loan? We can write the equipment off on that?
Well, this equipment is the kind that is permanently,
So it's okay?
yes, it's permanently attached to the building.
Any further discussion? If not, do we need a motion to place this on the next agenda? Is that,
So moved, Mr. Chair.
we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
And a second, and we'll have the opportunity to pursue this further if need be at the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
We need to vote on the motion. Is there any discussion before we vote?
Mr. Chair, I just have one other thing to say, and I say it again. These construction meetings and building committee meetings are open to the public, open to anybody that wants to attend them. There's nothing hidden behind it, so they're available. You can come, anybody can come, county commissioners can come, or any member of the public can show up anytime they want to.
Okay. No further discussion. We'll call for a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Emergency management.
Good morning, Commission. I think we're still morning. Oh, yeah, we're still morning. Dustin Willett, Pennington County Emergency Manager. Two items for you this morning. Item A is as I sit longer behind that desk, there's quite a few different memorandums of understanding and agreements that come through that office, and oftentimes the only signature I see on there is the Director of Emergency Management. So in the interest of being transparent and accountable when these agreements or memorandums of understanding come through, I just want to put them out so that you understand what some of those documents are that are floating around out there. So that first one is a memorandum of agreement with the medical group out at Ellsworth Air Force Base. Basically, when there's a large-scale disaster and the national stockpile of medicines and medical supplies are accessed, Pennington County Emergency Management, through the state of South Dakota OEM and a bunch of other agreements, Pennington County Emergency Management is where all those supplies come through. So for Ellsworth to be able to get national stockpile supplies,
they rely on Pennington County Emergency Management to get those supplies for them. So this is just an agreement on their part, a piece of paperwork they have to have in place that acknowledges that they would anticipate certain needs during times of a large-scale disaster, and that they would access those national stockpile supplies through Pennington County Emergency Management. So I just wanted to let you know that was there. Anything that deals with things on a county level like that, I think is important that the commission is aware of. Any questions on that first item?
Do you need a motion of any kind?
I don't think so. I just wanted to make sure that, again, it was just more transparency and accountability, let you know that those agreements are out there. When I see them, I want you guys to see them so that you're aware that they're there.
Next item.
All right, item B, and this is more of a question. I made an incorrect assumption. That happens more often than not, unfortunately, when we assume. I made an incorrect assumption that I could get a Sam's Club. This pertains to a Sam's Club membership. I don't know about other county departments. I'm not involved with that. In emergency management, we have cause several times throughout the year to make purchases that we can save a significant amount of money by locally going to a place like Sam's Club. When we run large area searches, when we have lots of search providers, Red Cross provides that conduit, but a lot of times we provide the actual food and meals and water, drinking water that the Red Cross then hands out to the people on that search, as well as our Disaster Awareness Day and some other public outreach things where we're buying hot dog buns and ketchup and things of that nature. And I don't know how much of that happens in other county departments, but it certainly happens in emergency management throughout the year. This year, it was one of those things that we needed, and I just paid for it out of my pocket and got the membership, and we used the membership that way. But I went to the auditors thinking that I could get that emergency management Sam's Club membership just through our budget, and was told that the commission in the past had frowned upon spending those budget dollars on a membership like Sam's Club membership. So I just wanted to come to the commission and ask if that was still the case, or if it would be appropriate for emergency management to use budgeted dollars for a Sam's Club membership.
How much is it?
$35.
Any comments on that question?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
This came up, I'm going to say 8-9 years ago, and there was lots and lots of discussion about those Sam's Club memberships. And I know that the cost, it seems to me, it was like $35 a piece and $100 a year for the county to be involved and to set up their charge account and do the billing, and we had to have a purchase order deal, I believe, set up, but I guess
my recommendation to that, you could make it that complicated if you so chose. If you leave it to the individual departments and then through the department heads that have a county-issued credit card, then you're not doing purchasing on account. Sam's Club isn't sending the auditors a bill directly. If it's an approvable purchase, if it's a reasonable purchase that the department head has vetted, they put that purchase with their department head or their department Sam's Club purchase, they put that on their department head credit card. So there isn't any direct billing. The county doesn't need that. In fact, it's more expensive for the county to do the $100 membership and then have all the $35 memberships under that, simply because if the county gets that $100 membership, then for each department that wants to have an account under that, it's $35 per card. If I do it just as emergency management, I spend that same $35 and I get 2 cards, one for myself and one for my assistant coordinator. So actually you get twice as many cards for $35. You get 2 cards for $35 instead of 1 card for $35. There's no reason for the county as a parent organization to have that $100 membership. In my opinion, that could be something that you guys, there's no advantage to that other than I believe just from open source internet, there's pharmacy savings that are included in that $100 annual membership, and then they pick items for special savings that they'll automatically put on your card. Well, I'm not doing my grocery shopping on my emergency management card. So it's, when we go there, we have a very specific, relatively emergent need. We need to pick up a couple flats of water because we have a lot of people up in the hills running around looking for somebody, something of that nature. So it's really, we need to go there and get some flats of water. So I really don't care what specials Sam Club wants to give me. I'm going for something specific. And I can save a not insignificant amount of money by using that particular facility in town. So I was just curious. I wasn't around for those discussions. I knew, obviously, the auditors made me aware that there was some concern there. And so I just wanted to come before the commission and ask if that would be something that would be acceptable.
Mr. Chair, and I was going to continue with that statement about the Sam's Club deal. That's not a problem. But I think maybe it's time to allow the department heads, I guess they know what they need and what they want in their departments, and I guess it's not up to me to micromanage. So, I mean, $35 a year, it's not a great big deal, but I think it's a benefit. And like you said, buying pallets of water from Sam's Club, a lot less expensive than buying it off the street, so.
If you'd make that a motion not to micromanage, I'd second it.
Only in your department.
I'll make a motion to allow him to join Sam's Club and take the $35 from his budget. Because the federal government is going to pay, what, half that, and the city's going to pay a fourth of it?
Correct.
What about,
Can't go wrong.
does that have to do with all departments?
Just a minute.
Does that have to do with all departments?
I guess I would include all departments in that.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and I guess I'll relinquish the chair again. I think rather than, it's kind of like poking your finger in a cobweb. I think unless it causes a problem for you, I'd like to have us wait till the next meeting for a final decision so that we can kind of flesh this out and make a policy that is workable for everyone and is understood by everyone. Does that make sense? So I'll accept your withdrawal of the motion in a second if.
I thought you weren't the chair anymore.
Back to me quick.
I withdraw.
I think you're
my
out of
motion.
order. No, I won't say that.
I withdraw the motion.
Okay, whatever you want to do, I don't care. I think, I believe that the department heads probably know what they need, and if they have an individual account, they just run it through on the items that we have in the book over there every month and pay the bills. And
So what are you saying?
oh, he's already done it, so I took care of my second.
So am I the chairman again?
I suppose.
So absent a motion and a second, we have the information. Holly has her sticky note written. And you what?
I shall write a policy.
Okay.
Can, Mr. Chair, can
Yes.
somebody give me some kind of an idea what would be in this policy that, I mean, just,
Well,
I mean, and I know it's right on the.
It may not be a policy, but
Okay.
we have things hiding in dark corners sometimes that come back to haunt us, and I think in order to avoid building another dark corner, we should explore it a little bit.
And I appreciate that. I actually had a conversation with Cindy in the auditor's office regarding this, and I do feel that it would be important to address the sales tax issue, who's responsible, because I spoke with the city of Rapid City. They do have a lot of billing issues with Sam's Club in regards to that sales tax procedure. So it would be good for us to absolutely clarify how it needs to be done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, Highway Department.
Good morning.
How are you?
We're getting some moisture today, and I'll take any kind of moisture, whether it's drizzle, rain, or snow. It's nice to see it for a change. First item I have is Resolution 2012-10-16-2 and 2012-10-16-3. These are all revisions to the Pennington County Highway System. Resolution 16-2 addresses county roads or public roads within the unorganized territory of the county. These are a whole list of county secondary roads that will be maintained by Pennington County. It's an official list of our secondary highway system, and that list includes 309.09 miles. And this will be forwarded to the state so that they can put it in their official database also. Resolution 16-03 is designated as county aid roads. These are roads within an organized township that the county maintains. And if they're designated as county aid roads, it gives the commissioners more flexibility to negotiate in the future on how we'll handle them, or we'll just keep maintaining them like they are. So it just kind of gives them a different designation and designates them as rural local roads as far as a classification. So I ask for commissioner approval on those two motions, and the county aid roads total 63.19 miles of road.
I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2012-10-16-2 and authorize the chairperson's signature.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the resolution just stated. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Do we have another motion?
I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2012-10-16-3 and authorize the chairperson's signature.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next item I have is Plateau Lane reconstruction. I have 1.9 million in 2013 budget to reconstruct that road. It's one of the worst roads in the county as far as ride and being narrow and coming apart. We held a public meeting September 13th. We notified 51 landowners by mail that have property along that road. Only 11 residents attended that meeting. We discussed the design. At that time, the road's design is two 14-foot lanes, curb and gutter, storm sewer with no sidewalks, because the current right-of-way along Reservoir Road's only 40 feet wide. And if you drive that road, you'll see a lot of hedges and lilacs and trees, and I didn't think most of the residents would be in favor of losing a lot of that vegetation. And due to the fact that we only had 11 people attend the meeting, I didn't have a good feel of because 7 of those people said they'd want to see a sidewalk, curbside sidewalk or some kind of sidewalk on the roadway, and as we discussed it, I thought that wasn't a very good majority to get a feeling of most of the residents. So we sent out a postcard to all those landowners and asked them to return it with a yes or no if they're in favor of working with Pennington County to get additional 5-foot of right-of-way on each side of Plateau Lane. There's 23 properties that this would affect, and we received 19 postcards back. 12 of them are in favor of sidewalks and 7 are opposing them. So then I went through and looked at the acreage or the square footage of each lot, and based on county policy that we offer 110% of current assessed value, to acquire 5 foot on each side of Plateau Lane will cost $29,257, and then if we put in some additional offers for shrubbery and bushes, I think our right-of-way costs will exceed about $30,000. Now, I gave you a map showing you the landowners that said yes and the ones that said no, and we have ones on each side of the road. And some have been very vocal. I've received phone calls and I've received a letter that they're absolutely not in favor of the sidewalk, and they're not gonna grant us a 5-foot right-of-way. So I guess my concern is, or my question is, do you want the highway department to proceed with acquiring a right-of-way with the knowledge that we may have to go to condemnation to get it totally completed for either side? Because we have 3 residents said no on one side and 5 residents said no on the other side. So I guess I need, do you want to pursue trying to acquire the 5-foot right-of-way? And if we do have somebody that absolutely refuses, we can't negotiate with them, we may have to condemn that 5-foot strip. I guess I need your knowledge and direction on how you want me to tackle this.
Heine, are you looking at putting sidewalks on both sides of?
Yes.
Plateau? Both sides of the street?
That's the way that was the letter in the postcard that I sent out to all the residents. Would you be in favor of a 5-foot additional right-of-way?
Okay. Because right now you don't have any sidewalks in either side.
No, there's no sidewalks, 40-foot, narrow 40-foot wide right-of-way. We don't have room to build a road and a sidewalk without, well, I guess we could fit a sidewalk on one side of the street and stay within the 40-foot right-of-way, but we're gonna be right against the right-of-way line, and we're gonna still destroy the roots and that on some of the shrubberies, and they're still gonna have to disappear. So I could possibly get it in on one side
I don't know,
without the 5-foot, but
I guess it just seems to me like if we're gonna be progressive and looking ahead a little bit, if we're gonna be working on that road and redoing that road, putting the sidewalk in residential areas just seems like the logical thing to do. Now, whether we need it on both sides of the street, I don't know, but I would yield that to you.
One of the comments that we heard that night was that the school children walk along there. And right now, they're walking in the middle of the street. And so for a safety issue, I think consideration of sidewalks is important. You mentioned that there was a zero tolerance property. Which one is it on here?
the one that said absolutely not, no way, you mean? You wanna know
No, I
what?
mean that we granted, and they were supposed to move a garage.
Oh, that's on Howie Drive. If you look up on Howie Drive, it's towards the top on the left-hand side of the map.
Okay.
You see how the center line of the road curves. Well, most of that road is encroaching on that private property to the south. And in order to straighten that road out, that garage has to be removed from that house. And the commissioners about a year ago granted a 0 setback provided they remove the garage. If they remove the garage, the remainder of the house is right next on the right-of-way line. But that house, once you granted a setback, I believe the owner at that time then turned around and sold the house to the current property owner, and I do not know if they realized that house was supposed to be removed.
The garage
is supposed to be. Or the garage is supposed to be removed, so that's gonna be an issue also. But the motion said, and the commission action said that the 0 setback is granted on the condition the garage is removed. Now, that's not happening, and who enforces that, or who's the person that says tear it down, or?
Well, I guess if it was the 0 setback was granted on the condition of removing the garage and they didn't meet the conditions, then that setback is not valid, right? Jay?
This is the first time hearing that.
That would sound logical anyway, wouldn't it?
And I know the problem with that particular property was because when I first moved here back in '95, I looked at maybe renting that house, and the garage was actually made into part of the living space of the home, so it's not just a garage that a car parks into. So there's some condition, and the condition was to remove it, so. And I don't know what the penalties are or how far the county can go to, or how we get the garage removed so we can get the street back where it's supposed to be. Otherwise, I'm surprised the neighbor to the south hasn't come to the county and forced us to get the road off of his property, so.
Heine, what kind of a timeline are we talking about in terms of making a decision on this?
Well, I guess I need a decision from the commissioners. If I get a approval to proceed with acquiring the right-of-way, I need to get started right away. We have the plans done, and I need to acquire the right-of-way before I can go out to a bid letting and get construction started next year.
What are the ramifications of having a sidewalk only on one side as opposed to both sides?
Nothing. I guess we'll shift the center of the road. The center of the road is shift over and kind of be offset in the 40-foot right-of-way, so we have room for the 5-foot sidewalk on one side. We could do that, or we could, maybe I should, if you want me to move ahead, hopefully, the 3 people on the one side of the road, maybe I can come with some kind of negotiations, or I'll make an offer to them, according to the county policy, and if they say no, and I'll ask them for a counter offer, and at that time I would bring it to the board to see if they would consider the counter offer. Otherwise, I think if we go to condemnation, it's about 6-month process. So that would probably push us out of next year's construction season.
My experience, and I realize that my being out and around in these areas is very random, but it's rare that you see anything more than 1 or 2 people walking sidewalks, with most of them leading a dog or a dog leading them. And so other than the times when school is convening or getting out, having 2 sidewalks to me is almost overkill.
See, on Reservoir Road, you just put 1 sidewalk in, didn't you, or has that got 2?
No, Reservoir Road only has a sidewalk on the west side. It's designed and built for 2 sidewalks, so we've got it. The subgrade is all built so that we can add a sidewalk on the east side without any additional right-of-way or interfering with the property owners, so.
For me, I'd like to see you have at least sidewalk on one side if we're gonna do this.
Well, I guess that's a question. I could proceed with trying to acquire the 5-foot right-of-way on both sides at this time and see if I can work a deal out with those landowners. If not, we'll shift it over and try and do it on one side. Well, if I can get 3 of them on one side, then it'd be possible.
So what kind of a motion do we need?
I guess I need to know if, so I go ahead and pursue trying to acquire the 5-foot right-of-way. I guess that's the question I need.
On one side or both sides?
Try both sides and.
Oh, Mr. Chair, if you look at this map, there's the 3 properties going down that side. To me, I would talk to those folks and see if you can acquire it. If you can't, we do have currently enough right-of-way for a sidewalk and the repair of the street. So I would just go that route. But it would be nice if those 3 folks on that one side were interested in working with us to give us another 5-foot right-of-way. And then you had 2 sidewalks. But I mean, it's something you should pursue now and look at. But if it's a pushback, I think we just go ahead and use our current right-of-way as mapped and put one sidewalk in.
See, the problem I'm gonna have do I just talk to those 3 landowners, or do I?
Because there's a lot of
Send it off.
landowners that didn't respond.
Yes, and we got a bunch that didn't respond, so to me, if I would do an overall letter and an offer to every piece of property on either one side or both sides of the road. You gotta keep in mind, once I make that offer and they accept it, we're probably gonna be obligated to buy that 5 foot, whether, I mean, it's either jump in with both feet and do it, and buy the 5 foot, and we're gonna have a bunch of people accept it. But if you have 1 or 2 that stops the whole process, you're gonna have to, now you've bought 5 foot of right of way, that is not gonna do us any good. So to me, it's either go all of it with the notion that you may have to do a condemnation process on 1 or 2 of the landowners. That's my worry is I know I'm gonna be able to negotiate with some of them, but there's a couple that are absolutely no way, and the house on Howie Lane, if we tell them to, or Howie Drive, we tell them to tear that garage off, there's absolutely no way you're gonna get a sidewalk in front of that house.
Well, we should tell them to tear the garage off anyway, but I'll make a motion to have you proceed to put sidewalk on one side going down Plateau Lane. And if you can do that without any condemnation, more power to you.
Is there a second?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. If you're comfortable with
Yep.
that kind of guidance,
Work with that.
any further discussion? Jay, we okay?
Mr. Chair, the only suggestion I would make, and I'm not sure out there where the schools are, but I think we should look at what side of the street that school is on and try to funnel the kids over on that side before they get there.
Well, the south end of Plateau Lane already has a sidewalk on both sides. So if you get down, I found my piece of paper.
Oh, really? So
You get down to the irrigation ditch where the green stops. From that point south to Williams is already sidewalk both sides of the road. That development came in after the fact, and they were required to have sidewalks on both sides of the road. So we're basically talking from Alberta Lane South has sidewalks, from Alberta Lane North to Twilight does not, so.
So that makes a different wrinkle to it then, doesn't it?
Is that,
I don't know, I still think probably the easiest, and if we want to get this project moving, that's going to be the most feasible way for you to go. Otherwise, if we're going to take people's land in condemnation, we're going to be working on this next year.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
And the only other thing I guess I would request then is if we're gonna move ahead with this project, I would like to maybe have the commissioners, have our legal office, pursue getting that garage removed. That's gonna be,
Dan's got an enforcement guy, I'm sure he'll send him out there.
who will? Oh, Dan?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you remember, but that was a variance request that went through County Board of Adjustment. They got a 0-foot setback, and they were required to tear down the garage. The current owner was required to do that. And I believe at this time it is with the state's attorney's office.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so they didn't tear it down, so the variance is not valid.
Well, the variance is for the house structure. It's the garage of the house that's in the right-of-way. And they were given
There was a condition on that variance. There was a condition on the variance, that you gotta tear it down. They haven't tore it down, so now the variance is, we ought to just back up.
Yes.
They didn't follow through with their end, so invalidates our end.
So then we still should be able to pursue removing the garage from the right of way.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
They were required to do that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Tell them they neither remove the garage or remove the house in the garage.
Yes. Or we will.
Okay, we're next on items 25A and 25B.
Morning.
Morning.
On the Mountain Pine Beetle Protection Plan project, there was a couple of typos in there that I didn't catch, and the mayor brought to my attention yesterday. This is the clean copy for signature.
Okay.
But there are a couple minor ones that are highlighted in red here in this copy I'm handing out. You to be aware of it.
Thank you.
Like I said, they're just minor spelling changes, but I'll kind of run through this quick on what's highlighted in the plan. We're kind of shifting gears this year from last year. Last year we went on private lands in conjunction with the state, and then provided a cost share with the state and kind of watered down our money with the state's dollars. And then we also did some 300-foot buffers on Forest Service last year, which landowners really appreciate that. So we thought with our limited funding and resources, let's concentrate on the other side of the fence. So the guys that are actively doing something on their private land, let's give them a little buffer on the Forest Service side. So that was kind of the crux of it. And then through our county Pine Beetle working group, we also looked at some other things to do. Look at 200-foot buffers on our emergency escape routes that are getting some loading up of some dead trees. Make sure that if there is an emergency, a fire or whatnot, that those roadways are clear and we're not having trees falling across the road. So going through the plan, private land, the state's still doing their program, providing the survey, and then cost share, they're doing 75% cost share this year with the private landowners. And then what we're doing is we're doing the 300-foot buffers adjacent to the private lands on Forest Service. And the reason I'm so late getting this in front of you and getting it formalized is we've been kind of waiting for the new district ranger to get in place at the Mystic level. And she didn't get on until the end of September and finally got the agreements in place a couple weeks ago. So we're finally proceeding ahead. In addition to the 300-foot buffers, we're, like I said, the 200-foot right-of-way buffers that we've identified, and I'll pass out a map here in a second to show you where those right-of-ways we've kind of identified so far. And then timber sales, if we can work with the timber sale owner, go in there, you know, if they're going to be in there a year or two ahead in the future, we can go and kind of do a holding pattern on that timber sale. But that's going to be at the expense of the timber sale owner and at their request, and working closely with them. We'll go in and identify it and cut the trees, but on their dime. And then shaded fuel breaks, we may look at doing some additional shaded fuel breaks similar to the Silver City project. But we left that out of our master agreement. Instead, we'll do separate agreements with either the communities or the subdivision and have a little more buy-in by that community. They're going to have to invest in as well on that. And then the preventative tree spraying like we did last year. We did a cost share program on the tree spraying if they had a commercial outfit come in and do it. The state's talking about providing that service, so if they do, we'll see what their program entails, and then that might save our program some money. I'll pass out a map here of some right-of-ways that were identified through the working group and Forest Service that we feel are essential emergency escape routes that have, is that spelling there?
We're gonna neuter those, but we're gonna neuter those bugs?
Yeah. I would have lost any time to do that. When it's capitalized, spell check doesn't catch it. So I'll make sure I get that corrected. But kind of the right-of-ways we've identified, and kind of in priority is Old Hill City Road. And then the Silver City, Otherwise Mountain roads, Calumet, Reno Gulch, and then Deerfield Road. You know, those have high population areas within the hills, and you know, we got trees right up to the right of way there. And I know Heine's department are busy going out there and getting trees out of the right of way when they die and tip over. And we're getting the red tops, the dead trees, and then also the green infested that are going to turn into red tops. So when we go in through and do that. To date, we've, once we got our agreement signed, we started going out and surveying. We haven't dropped any trees yet, but we've been going out and surveying, and so far we've identified 8,000 trees just on that 300-foot buffer on private. So there's plenty of trees out there, even just in those little right-of-ways right there. And we haven't started on our county right-of-ways yet, but kind of waiting on Forest Service to give us the go-ahead on that. That's kind of the plan in a nutshell. A little different direction from last year, but we felt with our limited resources, this is where we're going to be most effective and most efficient in what we do. So it's by no means going to stop the spread, but it's going to minimize the impacts on those private lands, especially the guys that are actively doing something. So we've already gone through some areas that we did some buffers last year, and you can definitely tell the difference on where we did the buffers last year. So it's working.
Any questions or comments? You need a motion, Scott?
Yeah, to approve the plan, I guess, and then we can talk about the contract.
Oh, excuse me.
Dan Richard. I'd just like to say, if the state and the feds gave the cooperation that the county guys do, I think most of this problem would be cleared up. But they just got so much bureaucracy. It's just piling on. One guy to the next guy to the next guy to the next guy. Everybody wants to be involved, but nobody wants to be responsible. And the county has just stepped up to the plate. So I just congratulate these guys on what they've done, because the state and the feds are making it harder to do than not.
Thank you.
I made the plea last spring, and I'll make it again this fall. I'd like for you folks to use all the influence you have to allow us to get rid of the dead trees. Twice, I've been denied the opportunity where I live to burn the stuff I have piled up. An overabundance of caution is not what life's about. We all take risks every day. The state wildland fire will not let me burn until everybody in an area has snow. Those are the exact words from Jim Strain. Until everybody in an area has adequate snow, they won't issue burn permits. From Rapid City, you can't tell what I've got. The only way to tell what I've got in the way of snow is to come up and look at it. When I left home this morning, the sun was shining. I know it's hard for you folks to imagine down here. The sun is shining up where I live. But twice, I had piles burnt up ready to go. Could not get permission. I talked to the Secretary of Ag, and he just blows me off. Back to state wildland fire folks. Talked to the governor's chief of staff. I think I've got them a little bit interested, but it's time for you folks to use your influence. Let's get rid of that fuel for next year's fires. Let us make the decision, not somebody in Rapid City, when to burn. Thank you.
And
Any other comments?
I think with Mr. Fairby's comments, I think that is a concern by the federal level and the state level. And I think we can push that and maybe lighten those guidelines, because there's a lot of cut and chunk going on. And there's a lot of fuel out there that should be burned.
I'll make a motion to approve the Pennington County Fire Protection and Mountain Pine Beetle Suppression Project as presented and amended by Scott.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, the second item is a contract for services. What we're planning on doing is actually doing individual contract with tree cutters to do the work for us. Last year, we kind of let the landowner try to find the cutter. Thought we'd cut out the middleman there, the landowner, and we'll just do a direct contract with tree cutters out there. And us, the county crews, will go out and survey the trees. Then we'll get a GPS location, number count, and then we'll give them a map where those trees are located. And they go out and they cut them down. Once they're done with that area, they come back to me, and we'll give them another project area to go to. There was some additional amendments to the Appendix A, the specs that the Forest Service is requiring. This is Forest Service requirement, and we're doing cutting on their property, so it's just a couple of additional things that they asked to be included in there towards the end. Has to do with like the streams and the seasonal streams and nests. If there's a squirrel rapture nest, they asked that it not be cut down, and some of those specifics that came from their specialists within their Forest Service. So a little frustrating, but we'll get around it, I guess. So
I don't think the squirrel can find another tree.
yeah. But I got about 15, 20 guys that have been calling me. The word's out on the street that we're looking to do this, and we're basically going to be paying $15 a tree, flat rate. And I think that's fair, especially with all the specs that they got to do, the pulling back of the underbrush and stuff like that, along fences and stuff like that. Lawrence County's at $10 a tree, but their restrictions are a lot lighter, and they're getting cracked down up there, and they're afraid that their cutters are going to leave because it's just too cheap to do it at that price. I think Weston County's at $18 a tree. A lot of guys that are from Rapid are going to Weston County, so they'd much rather cut here because it's less of a drive, less gas they got to burn. So a lot of these guys are Tatanka hotshot crews from the Forest Service, so they're very skilled with chainsaws. So I think we won't have any problem getting some skilled cutters. Jay went through this, got all the legal as far as the insurance and liability to free the county of any liabilities if they have any accidents or anything like that on there. So.
Will you be going out and inspecting some of these?
Yeah. Before the payment's approved, we'll go out and inspect what they've done to make sure they're meeting all the specs. So. Yep.
I'd make a motion to approve the Pennington County Fire Protection and Mountain Pine Beetle Suppression Project contract for services.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve the suppression project and contract for services. Any further discussion?
I guess one thing I forgot to mention, Nancy kind of broached the project, possibility of working with some of the power line companies, and I've had discussions with them and where they would contribute to the county, and we could do some right-of-way clearing for them. And actually, I've already talked to Game Fish and Parks. There's Highway 87 up on Sunday Gulch where they'd like a right-of-way cut, and they would pay us basically to use our cutters and identify the trees for them. So
that'll be pass-through money then?
Yeah, they would pay. I'd charge them, $18 a tree. That includes our survey costs, and then we'd just bill them, and we'd go out and do the work basically with our cutters for them.
And you'll probably be coming back in wanting a supplement to put that back in your budget so you can spend in the
Yeah.
Well, otherwise you're gonna
eat it. Yeah,
defeat the purpose of having this amount of money to cut trees with.
Yep. Yeah, it'd just be above and beyond what.
Yep.
Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Next item, 26.
I wanted to talk to the commission about the unspent contingency fund for 2012 and whether or not we would be interested in using that for the mountain pine beetle program, probably expended in 2013. And I wanted to hear what, just feedback on that. We can certainly use more funding. Can you give me those figures again? But we're almost halfway to what we thought we would be.
Yeah, we're budgeted right now. We got about 300,000. That's 250,000 from, that was in the 2013 budget. We carried over about 60,000 from this year's budget. And I'm going to be asking for a supplement to bring back like 200,000 out of that 213 because the time we got to do the control work isn't in the calendar year. So we got to be cutting a little bit this year and then a little bit into January and February. But that gives us at $15 a tree roughly 18,000 trees to cut. And like I said, we're at our 8,000 and we still got about another half of the private lands and we haven't even started on the right of way. So we definitely, prioritize if we get over that mark on where it's most important. But the more money we got, the more trees we can cut, obviously, so.
Well, and the confusing part of this always is that the mountain pine beetle cutting season spans the end of our fiscal year. So it always kind of gets to be a problem, trying to figure out how to keep that money flowing through. And so that's why I would have, or I would want to talk about the unspent contingency for 2012 being used in 2013.
Do you have any input, Julie?
Well, I was waiting to see what the support was before I got up here. You can't really do that. You can't make a motion in 2012 to supplement to the 2013 budget from contingency. There's a couple options. We can just note that we're going to use that amount in the contingency and come in the first part of 2013 before we start it within the budget cycle of using that unspent money and over collected revenue budgets. Or if you want it in a more formal structure, you can put whatever that balance is or whatever balance you want into a special reserve fund like we did for the software, like we do for the crisis care center, and then use that money in 2013 and just pull from that reserve. It's a little bit more structured that way. It does the same thing. It's just the bookkeeping part of it for us.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I got a question for Julie. Julie, has there been, and I got this this sheet, has there been have we made any obligations to that contingency fund yet?
I don't believe so. Is there any?
We have not. And I would agree, the action that we would take would be after the first of the year, because we may need some of that between now and the first of the year.
Yes.
And those decisions usually aren't made until sometime in December.
Yes, the supplement requests are due today from the different departments for the year-end results, and the board always has the option to take it from contingency, which just means then we use what funds we didn't use to supplement the 2013 budget.
The question I got then is, when you figure when we're figuring the levy for to support the 2013 budget, was any of this money figured in as left over at the end of the year?
Yes.
Calculating it.
Not that money specifically, but a certain percent of the budget, and again, we won't know what that is until we close.
So,
and we take an average. So we do make some assumptions of over-collected revenues that we use toward the budget and overspent or underspent budgets.
So at least for me, I mean, I can support this because I think the mountain pine beetle is kind of a current big issue that's kind of hard for us to budget for. And so if we have some funds that we haven't either obligated or are not figuring on using to support the 2013 budget, I could be supportive of that. What I would like to see, though, is when we get into January 2013, having those figures put together to say, here's what I figured on using, here's what we actually got, so here's what was left in contingency, and it's money that
and
we
all the budgets, yes.
We could make a motion to put it into the mountain pine beetle budget.
Yeah, those figures we wouldn't have available till at least the end of January, though, because we have accounts payables that come in and people don't get those paid until into the first part of the year.
That shouldn't hurt you if you don't get this additional information till the end of January, 1st of February.
No, I mean, either which way you want to run with it. I mean, we could, well, I think it's 100,000. That's about 6,000 trees that they could cut that this year if we need to, but we can push it next year too. It doesn't, because I'm going to be asking for 200,000 out of 2013 so I can get my guys going, the cutters going. And
well, but the other thing too, Scott, is, I mean, if it's used for this current cutting season, it really has, I mean, those trees need to be down and done by the end of February.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And that's where it's going to be because at the end of December, hopefully we got enough money to keep those guys going, then we can roll them.
Mr. Chairman, and I'm in favor of this too. The problem is, you can use every bit of money that we can give you, so if we gave our entire budget to you, you'd still use all that, wouldn't you? And my problem is it doing any good? That's, right now, because I see your program for next year is not to stop it, it's to make it safer where the trees don't start a fire and they don't fall down on the streets, but we're not doing anything basically to stop the spread of it.
And that's where we're working with the legislature to try to get some funding to do some larger landscape. You look at those larger landscape, you're talking a lot more money than a couple, 2,000-3,000, you're talking millions to do the landscape level, and that's kind of where we're heading with the legislature.
And the other thing too, to kind of remind you, the state has its private land program. And for us to do the same thing as the state, when we could actually do something that augments the state's program by doing the buffers and by doing the right-of-way clearing, it makes it an overall more effective, because the state itself has $1 million this year to help the private landowners. And so for us, to augment and make it all more effective, we decided to go this way.
I'd like to respond to Ron's question. If we're doing any good, I sure can't see it. Elk hunting up at Moon, when you're up there in the unburnt area, and there's still some unburnt area up there, you sit down and rest and look up and say, oh, damn. There's some dead green trees. That was last year, and I'm sure it's worse this year. So I think we're going to have to let nature play its course. What we're doing is about the same as if we took a bunch of buckets, a bucket brigade, and went to Pier 2 years ago to bail the water out of the lake, the flooding lake. This thing is way bigger than us. Once again, I would like to, all I ask, I don't want any money to cut my trees down. I'll do it myself. I'll pile up myself. All I want is to keep from going to jail. And while I'm here, last Monday, guess what? Almost went to jail again. Last Monday evening, I looked out, and here's a fire truck coming down a hill with lights flashing. Looked over next to my mailbox, and here was a vehicle, looked like a sheriff's vehicle. And when I got closer, sure enough, it was a sheriff's vehicle. And I rendezvoused about the same time that the fire truck got there. And of course, I've known the guy since I've been here. So, Vic, what are you doing here? We got a report of a structure fire. What? Vic could clearly see my burn barrel burning. So Vic turned around and went home with the fire truck. The cop wasn't quite as anxious to leave. And he finally realized he was on a mission that wasn't proper. I wasn't burning my piles. I sure wanted to burn my piles, but the government wouldn't let me. But I was burning my burn barrel. Almost went to jail for that, folks. The other 95% of South Dakotans don't worry about going to jail for burning in their burn barrel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further on this issue? I take it we don't need a motion? Or
No, I just wanted the discussion, and after the first of the year, then we can take it up again.
Okay, thank you. Next item 27, Commissioner Busgroup.
Well, thank you. This is going to be another one of my popular ones. Read in the paper a couple articles and a couple letters, and I guess I came to the conclusion that I agree with them. I think we need to be closed on Martin Luther King Day and on Native American Day. If we can be right now closed on a shopping day, the day after Thanksgiving, we sure can be closed on holidays that the state has declared. So I guess probably up for discussion, because I probably wouldn't get a second, but my suggestion would be that we have 10 holidays: New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Native American Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas Day, and we're closed on those 10 holidays, which does away with the Friday after Thanksgiving, and it does away with 2 of those being floating holidays. That would be my motion next.
Is there a second?
I'm going to second it, Frank.
Thank you. I guess the reason, and my reasoning is very simple. How can we not be closed on Native American Day, but be closed on a shopping day? Just because it's the day after Thanksgiving. Makes no sense to me.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to hear comments from the staff on this. Is there?
If Commissioner Holloway, I'm sure remembers, Ron Busgood should remember, the reason we went to, as a county, went to floating holidays is because the 24-hour operations have to work those days anyway, and what it does is gives us budget relief for the way those holidays that aren't closed ever for the 24-hour operations, it alleviates us having to pay the double time and the overtime that they have to structure around. So it was frankly a decision by the board at that time that it was a substantial savings of overtime for those 24-hour operations. I don't know that your those holidays are observed. They're just holidays where the offices are open. There's many businesses open on those days. As for the day after Thanksgiving, I have no idea why that was ever started. We don't follow all the state holidays. We don't follow all the city holidays. They have a religious holiday that we don't. So I don't know how you're ever going to match that up. And we thought it was a bigger benefit to the taxpayers at that time when we had that discussion that we were actually open for them on possibly a day that they had not at work so that we could perform services for them. Each department head can man their office any way they want anyway. So, again, the biggest concern and why we went to the floating holidays was to save budget money for the 24-hour operations and to give more service time to our taxpayers. So that's the history of it.
Maybe we could make the day after Thanksgiving Columbus Day.
Julie, excuse me, but did I hear you say that each department head has the authority to do what they want to with these?
Yeah, they can staff their office heavy or light on those days anyway. They have to be open if you declare it open, but they can staff their offices those days anywhere like they do any other day.
So is there a distinction between elected department heads and non-elected department heads in terms of?
Because the commissioners still set the hours of elected officials' office hours in the courthouse or over in the public safety building. Doesn't affect the 24-hour operations anyway.
Is there a formal policy in place now at this point that everyone follows, or is this just kind of a what everybody remembers from some time in the past?
No, well, I guess I don't know what you're directly asking, but the board set up the floating holiday system.
When?
I don't remember when that was.
A long time ago.
It's a long time ago.
There is
It's when we still had,
policy on it.
yeah, and that's been approved during several remakes of the personnel handbook. But if you're relating to the staffing area, that's something, the staffing, that's done every day by a department head or elected official.
Yeah, the reason I'm
Yeah.
asking the questions is that I sometimes think when a policy or something exists over a long period of time and it becomes a little fuzzy in terms of who understands what, that either a periodic education program takes place that says to everyone, new employees and old employees, this is the way it is. Or if there are problems with the application of it, that it go into some kind of a reexamination process that brings it to a current level that everyone understands and abides by.
Yes, of course, the department heads and employees that have been here for any number of years are aware that we have the floating holiday system. And new employees coming in, it's holiday and benefits packages are described to them or not individually, but in small orientation groups by the HR people. So they are aware of the way it works. And it does not affect your closed holidays, or only those holidays closed for the non-24-hour operations. The buildings are actually closed.
Then going beyond the the holiday thing and which ones are honored and which ones aren't, when the wind blew the other day and we declared the courthouse closed because of the power, what policy applies then?
If the courthouse is closed on a non-closed day, the employees, the hourly paid employees or the non-exempt employees have to take that as a vacation day, work extra hours the rest of the week, or take it without pay. And that's the way it's been since the board. We always had issues with it. How were we fair with 24-hour operations people like law enforcement, dispatch, detox, highway department that have to work on mostly at snow days? And the board at the time determined that was the fairest way to do it. If it was closed due to weather-related, expanding that to no electricity where you truly can't work, they have to take vacation or leave without pay or work their 40 hours else during the week if that's offered by their department head.
Sure.
Okay,
And
finally
if I
got
can,
Nick up.
Sure, and if I can comment on this, we actually had a really good conversation yesterday at our department head meeting. It was pretty well attended by the department heads, and we discussed some of these issues, especially because we just got done with having a closure with the electricity and then getting into snow season. And what our policy does state, and the practice that we're trying to get to, is when an operation is closed, like when the courthouse is closed, that people recognize that it's closed for a reason, be it safety reasons usually, or lack of power, because then work can't get done, and that the people honor that, go home, and they're not here. Usually the most common closure would be a snow closure, and the reason we don't want people here is for safety reasons, trying to come to work, have it be dangerous, or the fact that the public can't be here if there's no road travel advised. There's not really a reason for us to be here if it's for non-essential personnel. And that's what we were trying to do yesterday, is trying to distinguish between not essential personnel, which is dispatch, the sheriff's office, emergency management in some cases, and the non-essential personnel in an emergency. So I don't know if I'm answering the question that you're asking, but basically when something like that happens, where people were already at work, it was an electricity issue, we're trying to coordinate with Judge Davis, you as the chairperson, emergency management, and buildings and grounds, and making sure that the understanding is why we're closing, who that closure affects, so we can all be on the same page. But if I may, getting back to the proposed motion, I would be in favor of leaving it as it is. We took I guess it would be a straw poll, I don't know if it was official, but I had some people talk to their employees when this was put on the calendar. And then yesterday in the department head meeting, it seemed that people really liked having the day after Thanksgiving off. It's not a holiday, so it doesn't cost. People either have to use one of their floating holidays that they worked, or they have to take vacation, or they take it off without pay. So what the governor did was go ahead and give everybody like the Christmas Eve off paid, which is not what we're asking. It seems that people really like having that 4-day holiday, makes it convenient for them. A lot of the floating holidays are confusing to some people when they first come here, But we do our best, and I know in my orientation and in the sheriff's office, which is a little different, but on my side of the county, I hopefully make it pretty clear with the department head's help on what those floating holidays are and why we have them and how they came about, as my understanding. And all I can do is ask people who've been here, like Julie and KJ and Janet and Dawn, the people who've been here when that was instituted.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Holloway.
So I'll probably vote against my second. I just needed to hear what you guys had to say. So.
I'd like a roll call vote. Yes.
No.
Holloway, none present. Troutman?
No.
Peterson?
No.
I think I'm going to put this up.
What does it say?
Motion failed. What do you got there?
I had to loan it to him, he asked for it.
I see.
So then are we going to discuss the Christmas Eve?
I see my name on that. I just want the board to make the decision so that the people stop calling us. The governor has given normally we work 4 hours on Christmas Eve day, and the other 4 hours of the normal scheduled 8 hours. We are closed. The employees take off, mostly in the non-24-hour operations. They normally take the other 4 off as paid vacation, and we're actually closed. The governor sent out the notification, the governor's office, that they were going to be closed these days, which mostly we are closed, plus they were going to be closed the full day of Christmas Day, which once I forwarded that out so that department heads were aware what the state would be doing, of course, the question comes up, well, do we have to work the morning of the 24th? I just want a decision from the board. I'm not advocating one way or the other. If you close, they're going to have to take it off as vacation pay, which that is the powers to be get to make the decision, and I'm tired of funding the questions when I can't make the decision and answer it.
I don't see that there's any question. We just got done saying that the state, we don't care what the state does because we're going to do what we want to do. And it looks like the policy is very simple, and there it is.
It is.
County offices will close at 12 on the 24th. County employees will use annual leave, holiday hours, or leave without pay to cover any others hours that they normally would work. I don't know what decision we have to make.
Unless we pass a motion to the contrary, the
Yes.
existing policy is in force. Is that the way I understand it?
Yes.
Okay.
And you've made the decision of which it's going to be, so we can tell them for sure. We didn't want to come up in the first meeting in December or the second meeting in December. We thought we'd tell it now so everybody knows.
That's good. What's the wish of the commission?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I don't feel that I can shoot Commissioner Buskerud in one foot for one item and turn around and do the opposite on the other foot. So if there's a motion to approve closing entirely on Christmas Eve, I'll probably vote against it.
If there is no motion, we'll proceed to
Thank you.
items from the chair. Thank you. I've had, we had an inquiry by the 4-H people relative to their hours, office hours, and I advised them that we needed to have the entire commission address it. So, Tiffany, if you want to come explain to the board what you're seeking to accomplish.
Hello, I guess it's good afternoon now, not good morning. I brought up to the extension board, and they were talking and through email and stuff like that, because we haven't had our meeting yet for this month, but our office staff, when she is in the office by herself because we were out programming, or like we had to go to Brookings a couple weeks ago and she was the only one in the office, she was stuck there the whole time and wasn't able to get her hour lunch that she should be allowed. And so because of testing for pesticide testers, and when you test for pesticide, you have to, it is an open book test, and they are given as much time as they want, but you can't stop them in the middle of it and have them go again. Once they're done, if they stop in the middle, they have to turn in. So she's got to stay there all day until they are finished with their test. So we brought it up to the extension board to allow us to close at 4 o'clock to allow her to get her hour time that she is allowed to have, but yet still be there for our 4-H families and also for the testers during that lunch hour when they come in to our office to get work done or to hand things and things like that. So I just wanted to bring it up to the commission to see if you guys were okay with that, to being able to allow us to close an hour earlier to allow for her to get her allocated lunch hour.
Is that only when she's the only one in the office, or would that be all the time?
That would be all the time, because usually, majority of the time, we are programming after school, and that's usually after, by 4 o'clock. Everybody is usually out and about doing things, and so she's usually about 90% of the time in the office by herself for that afternoon time.
It takes some of these people that take the test, it takes them more than 4 hours to complete a test?
Yes, the general, we tell them to allocate 4 hours, but there's been some that have been there for 6, pushing 7, even just on the one general test. And then usually about 3, out of 3 or 4 people, there's usually one that always have to come back and retest again. And we've had our office filled with about 10 testers at a time, especially during the whole pine beetle gold rush, as I call it. We've had people come up from Colorado, True Green, the Forest Service, everybody around. They come to our place because we're the most organized. Even people that are from Custer, and they even have a testing center in Custer, would rather come to our office because we can get it done and get it handed in for them in a more timely manner. So we're kind of the one known around in the West River area to go to, which only brings people, if they're coming from Colorado, to our area. That makes sure that they're paying money in our county and things like that too. So.
Any other comments or questions?
Is there, have you looked at any possibility of someone coming from this building to maybe fill in that hour for Kathy, or?
No, we never have. Usually we get people, there'd be days like when we have our end of the year reports are due from all of our clubs, fair time and everything, we would keep ourselves open later for them, because there's been times where I've let her go at 5 o'clock. That's when she's off. I'm salaried, so I'm more than willing to stay there for that extra, and I usually stay open till about 6 to allow people to come in after work because there's usually lots of questions. So, we were gonna say we were gonna be open longer for those types of things, as they occur, but we never thought about having somebody come over for that hour, because I know people are busy over here too.
So here's another thing to think about. You're basically open at 8, but it seems like a lot of your activity is late afternoon. Would it be more feasible to open at 9?
We could do that too. I know usually she's there at 8, and we have people coming in and stuff like that, but usually from like lunch on, or it can be a little bit busier, but usually 4 o'clock is when we're winding down a little bit. But yet, if we still have testers, then they're usually out of there by 3:30 at the latest if they're doing tests. That's why we were thinking 4 o'clock, because she'll start them at 8:15 in the morning when they come in.
Okay.
No, that's.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
What's this 7-hour test you're talking about? Didn't take me that long to get sworn into the Army.
Pesticide applicators, they're very good at their job, but sometimes they're not the greatest test takers. So it is an open book test. I can't remember, it's about 90 or so questions, multiple choice, but they are giving, you would not think, but they are given, lots of materials. The book is about this thick they have to go through and find the answers for. and other materials on top of that. And then they also have, in order to get your commercial applicator test, you also have to take other tests on top of that. So you can't just take the general like a private applicator would.
Why couldn't somebody from 4-H fill in for her that hour? When she's gonna get her lunch anyway, no matter what happens. She can take it off the next day or get it sometime during that day.
I guess it's just because, you know, when we're busy and everything, in which we're constantly, everybody's coming in the office and we're always doing something. It's just so her comp time doesn't, you know, she doesn't have to accrue so much on her comp time because you only can cover 40 on the books. So we want to make sure she's getting her allocated time without having to, you know, do comp time. And, you know, and the reason why we're bringing this up now is because before we had, you know, 6, 7 people in the office and we could all help each other out and stuff. But when I'm doing after-school programs, a military person's doing after-school programs, and also the FNEP ladies are out programming, we're usually about the same time. I mean, I'm going all day, and so everybody's going all day, but we try to help each other out. We do that. Don't get me wrong, we do that. But it's just to allow her to make sure she can have her hour that she's allocated.
Is she an exempt employee or an hourly?
She is.
She's not exempt. Okay.
Even if you work her 7 hours, you gotta give her some time to eat.
Well, and that's what me and Dustin and I were just talking about it. According to FLSA rules, we can't legally force a person to work through their lunch if they work an 8-hour day. We have to give them some time off. A person can voluntarily do it if they want to work through their lunch and take off an hour early because they've got a soccer game to go to. That's fine, but if we force a person to do it, then we're violating the law. So I don't know what the answer is, but
I guess we wanted to be more on a consistent basis. If we were closed every day from 8 to 4, that way our 4-H families and the public know that. So we're not going to have angry phone calls or anything like that. So
you're attempting to standardize it to the point?
right. Instead of going like, okay, we'll go 8 to noon, and then somebody shows up and we're not open, and then also the next day we're doing 8 to 4 because, you know, that didn't work. We would just like to have just a standardized time so everybody knows it and can work around their schedules for it.
What's wrong with saying the hours are from 8 till noon and from 1 to 5?
That's what I'm saying. When you have testers in the office, she's going to end up having to work through her lunch hour anyways. Because some of them do take more than 4 hours, 5 at least sometimes.
You're trying to set a time frame so the employee is the one we're worried about here. So it looks to me like her lunch period ought to be from noon to 1.
Right, and I did bring
No
that
matter
up to the
what's going on,
board.
Unless the whole world's coming to an end, which you're supposed to do in December, but.
It's coming up.
Heine, how do you've announced something about your different hours?
Don't we have the 4-H advisory board? Don't we have
My hourly employees carry a dinner bucket, and they have to eat in their truck when they're plowing snow, or we do provide them a lunchroom when they're in the office, so. And to me, lunch break is any time between 11 o'clock and 2, because you never know what's happening. As long as I give them their 30 minutes to eat, be it in a truck, sitting in a truck, or sitting in a backhoe, and they get their 30 minutes, but that 30 minutes can occur anytime between 11 and 2. I mean, I cannot dictate, we got projects going on that I can't say everything stops at 12 o'clock. It's gotta be flexible, but we only allow a half-hour lunch for hourly employees at Highway, so.
Mr. Chair? I'm just wondering, I thought we had a 4-H advisory board or something that
We do.
saw that, and so I'm wondering why this is the county commission's issue. Why are we trying to figure out when the 4-H office will be open?
And it was brought to their attention first, and so, but it was at the recommendation of Lindell, because we haven't had, I mean, they all agreed on it through email, saying that, yes, it seems more feasible to have it open from 8 to 4. But I think it was just to bring it to your guys' attention about it. So you're staying in the loop with 4-H.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think the concern was because of the sensitivity in this area, that it be done with the understanding of everyone, and if it's the interest of the commission to let the advisory board function in this manner, fine. If not, then we need to let them know.
That would be my motion.
We really shouldn't make any motions. It wasn't on the agenda.
Okay.
And I stood up to support what
We'll
Dawn
never get that
said.
15 minutes back.
As Dawn and I have been working together, we come into the conclusion that these type of things should be handled more by the advisory board, but at the same time with your guys' awareness. So I don't know if we want to get something formal from them and then she comes to you and just makes you aware. I don't know if that's acceptable.
You know, I noticed somewhere in our packet, there was a memo from Heine saying these are the winter hours.
Yeah, it's just an informal memo to the board saying this is what we're doing.
And so unless someone wants to pursue it differently, we do the same thing.
That's fine with me.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see, just the other item that I would have is that in the office, Holly's office, there is the programs and the plaque from the 4-H people. They had a recognition event last Sunday, and lots of kids, lots of achievement, lots of awards, and pretty impressive. So, next item is commission assistance.
The county was approached by a cell phone company and wants to come to the commission to present a proposal to put a tower on our building. So what I wanted to do to come in front of the commission today was just to determine if you guys are interested in pursuing this. There is additional questions that need to be asked and research that needs to be done. However, I don't want to waste anybody's time if the board isn't interested in it. This isn't something that we requested in terms of providing service to the county. They came to us.
And it's really not to provide services for the county, it's to provide services for the community.
Correct.
I guess before I would support something like this, I'd have to have the county buildings and grounds manager saying, yeah, this, I've looked at it, it looks like it'd be feasible, it wouldn't be a detriment to our building, then I would take a look at it. But
And this organization has talked to Buildings and Grounds. They've also scheduled a time to meet with the radio techs to make sure that there's no interruption for dispatch. But again, I don't want everybody to go to all this work and the board say, whoa, back up, we're not interested in this.
Well, and how tall is this tower going to be? I mean,
We don't have any of those
it's
details
going to be a
yet.
tree on top of the building.
And we also have to run it by Betsy Abbey, don't we?
We do have to run it through bond council.
We got a
They're-
lot of work to do, but
I actually, in the end, am probably not going to be for it. It isn't going to be very much that would convince me to be for it. I just as soon not have to deal with that. We have enough to deal with in our own communications and our own systems and everything, and I just don't see throwing in something else.
well, but we might be able to hang some of our equipment off of that same tower if we put it up there.
They have
No?
The,
Leanne Hollenshed, Emergency Services Communications. We've looked at it preliminarily with Adam. Take a look. There's some serious separation things that we have to do with the antenna. Our current equipment that's located on all of the buildings at the moment would not be able to accommodate anything from another provider. It would likely have to hang off of a building. And then the other thing would be the actual equipment that's associated with it. We don't have a lot of space, so we would have to actually have space carved out somewhere in the
You're not
complex.
supportive of this at all.
There's a lot of stuff that would have to be done first. The biggest thing would be an RF study because we can't have it interfere with any of the public safety communications. And you can tell if you really get a 30,000 foot view that there's a lot of it in the complex. It's not impossible, but it would be tricky to place it somewhere where it would be unseen and yet not interfere.
I'll make a motion not to pursue it.
Second.
Any further discussion or input? We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Thank you. The next item I have in front of you today is a proposed department head annual evaluation procedure policy. In the past, this has kind of evolved from just even when I started 3 years ago, and it is my desire to get it down in written policy form. So again, you have a draft in front of you that I have forwarded to users boards. And the reason we're doing this is because we have different classifications of department heads, from elected officials to department heads who report to users boards to department heads that report directly to you as a board. I have routed it to the users boards. There is only one that I have not heard back from. The other ones are favorable of this. So basically what I'm asking the board is to approve this policy as presented.
Which one have you not heard back from?
I have not heard back from the Public Defenders Advisory Board.
Okay.
Is there such a thing?
I sent it to Mr. Conley. I know he was heading out of town, and I have not had a response back from him.
I suspect they would be in favor of it.
So you're looking for a motion to accept this? That would be my motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Nick, do you have any input?
Oh, I was here to support Holly. We worked on this a little bit together. She actually did most of the work. I just helped her out at the end. So if there was any questions, I thought I'd be ready to go. So I don't have any further.
Anybody want to watch him go? If there's no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
In conjunction with this, I had you pull the 3 department head evaluations that we have scheduled today due to the potential length of the meeting and the effectiveness of holding evals at the end of a long day. I would like to ask the board to schedule a special meeting on December 17th in the morning. We will dedicate it strictly to doing evals of department heads. We'll schedule them appropriately. I'm thinking every 15 minutes. We'll get them up, we'll get everybody out of here and get them done in one day.
December 17th, you said?
Yes, sir, it's a Monday morning.
It's a Monday.
Monday morning. You have a commissioners meeting on Tuesday morning. And again, I'm trying to time this to get it done by the end of the year, before the holidays.
Fine with me.
Okay.
I don't care.
What you wish.
It's not a bad idea, I think.
I'm fine with it.
Okay,
What time, 9?
we can start at 9.
Then we can get our personnel hats on and really get mean.
It's scary.
Deal with all these,
Kind of warming up for Christmas.
warm up for Christmas, yeah.
I just want to add, I polled some department heads and we thought this would be a better option. And like Don said, you know, you put on your personnel hats, you sit down, and we don't do this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon after a, 7-hour meeting and everybody just wants to go home. Shouldn't take that long. And Holly had found an old schedule at a prior board that I think Ken might even have been on, where it was 15, 20 minutes. Everybody comes in, knock it out in the morning, and then we can all get it done. So the poll I took was in support of this.
What do they say now? Bah humbug?
Do we have a
Okay.
motion?
Do you want a motion?
Motion to do just that.
To
Schedule a special commission meeting on December 17th at 9 a.m. dedicated strictly to department head evaluations in executive session.
That'd be my motion.
And
Is there a second?
Second.
I thought I made that motion somewhere in there.
Well, it wasn't that specific. We do have the necessary words in place, I think.
The only thing that I would ask is that if there's some kind of an emergency arises between now and then, I wouldn't like that limited, so somebody, we couldn't get something on that special meeting if something happens. I don't know if that's something to worry about or
Well,
not.
you're having a meeting the very next day.
Yeah, but, they're in here having one then. Somebody might need something.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second, unless you want to amend the motion.
I'd like to see it amended if emergency situations come up that can be added to the meeting.
I don't know if you can advertise it that way, can you?
We can always talk about it. We don't have to act on it, but
There'll be an agenda, just like normal. It'll just be an executive session item.
Whatever.
I don't care.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, third and final item that I have for you today is as a result of the discussion at our last commissioners meeting, the commission asked to look into possibly having a special meeting for the Spring Creek Watershed Project. I have spoken with the project coordinators. It is our thought that we should hold a special meeting in Hill City near the watershed. And this agenda item today is strictly for you to decide if you wish to proceed, date, time, facility use agreement, advertising, so on and so forth. So if that's the direction the board wishes to proceed.
I know it's nitpicky, but if you call it a special meeting, then we're required to have staff up there to take minutes. If you're going to be making actions, of course, we're willing to do that. If you're just going to take input from the public, have a discussion on it without making any decisions, you can call it a public hearing, and we're not required to staff it.
That's a good point.
I would think we're not gonna make any decisions.
I don't know.
Not that day.
Yeah, so if you call it a public hearing, which is more along the line what you do for Heine's projects.
I thought there was going to be an informational meeting where it was going to come from and have the DENR and the Environmental Protection Agency and that put out the information that we need to know.
If that's the wishes of the board, if you want to just have an informational session, we can do that.
It just makes a difference on that word meeting. To us means that we have to treat it like an official commission meeting. You can take action, but we have to record it.
So if we just have an informational, that'll be it.
Yep,
You
that'll
gonna
be
come
it.
up to Hill City sometime in November?
So in terms of this subject, if we make a motion, the motion should be specific to whether it is a special meeting or a public hearing.
Yeah, just don't call it a special meeting. If you want to call it an informational, public awareness, something, then it's not a declared county commission meeting, and we don't have to take minutes.
What's the wish of the board? Do we want to clarify our intent before we make any motions in terms of whether you do or don't want it to be an official meeting of the commission?
I think first you need to decide if you want to have one.
Pardon?
I think first we need to decide if you want to hold one,
We'll hold a meeting?
to go through this exercise.
We need a motion to that, to accomplish that. So, decision number one. Do we or don't we want to have a meeting?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I would make a motion to have a meeting and hold it on Tuesday, the November 27th is not a commission meeting day, is that right?
No, sir.
It's not a commission meeting day. Okay, that's the date I'd make the motion to.
In the evening, Ken?
Yes,
And it's just informational?
informational only.
And then my other question, I didn't understand, task force?
Oh, my apologies. Pete with DENR has a task force meeting on December 4th, so his availability might be a little restricted around that. So my preference was the Wednesday of the 28th, but Tuesday works just fine.
Okay, so the motion died for lack of a second, and perhaps the discussion will allow us to clarify the motion, be specific in terms of what kind of a meeting it is and so forth.
I thought we were going to go doing that one at an item at a time, but that's why I didn't
Well,
proceed.
you included the date in your motion, which took it beyond whether we do or don't have a meeting.
Well, it covered, Mr. Chair, covered item number one completely.
Which is fine. We can do it that way.
Okay. You want to state your motion again?
We didn't get a second on it, so I'll let somebody else do it.
Well, I'll make a motion to hold a informational hearing at the Hill City High School on on Tuesday, November 27th at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Set a time limit of 2 hours.
Sure.
From 7 to 9.
7 to 9.
And open open house.
And that's enough for the time being. I'll do it 3 and 4 later on.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Strong. Wanted to make a comment. Hello, Stephanie Strong, hello. And then I just wanted to pass these out as well.
Is it related to this motion?
Yes. I'll be brief.
So you don't want to have the meeting, or what's against the motion? Because we're dealing with a motion.
I would like to have the meeting on December 3rd. And I would also like to include, besides the things from the DENR, if you could look, and I'm just offering this as a tool for you, that we would like to be included in the informational packet, because what this is, it's a local land use plan versus a federal land use plan. And it really gives the county commissioners the power to do what they want to do in their local communities.
All right, well, why don't you talk to us about the meeting date, because that's what we're discussing today.
Yes, I would like the meeting to be December 3rd if possible.
Why? Can I ask why?
Because Kurt was going to present this and he is only available on that date.
But the Board of Commissioners has not decided what format they want this meeting to be in yet. That's up to them.
Yeah, I don't care what format or anything. We just wanted to be able to get information so that you have a full view of what's going on there.
I apologize, ma'am. I just don't think that this is the appropriate time for that to be presented to them. All we're doing today is to talk about setting the meeting and the date and the time. So if there's information that needs to be presented to the board, we need to do that in the appropriate manner.
Okay, and that's including asking
Yes,
it.
Mr. Chair. I think we've considered all 4 of these dates, and obviously we're not going to be able to select a date that's going to be good for everyone. And we're putting this out far enough in advance, so I think we should go ahead and vote on the motion as it stands with.
Can I say one more thing then?
Just a second.
Okay, thank you.
I'm still talking.
Thank you.
Meeting on the 27th, and then, once we get by that motion, then we can talk about how we're going to structure the meeting.
Okay. Do you understand what he said?
Yes.
We have,
And then can I just
So-
make one more statement here at this point, is if we're not able to attend it, that somebody else may be able to present this information or a video of it so that you have the information available to you to use.
We're talking about the date, not the content of the
Okay, okay.
Mr. Chair, I call the question.
question has been called.
Thank you.
All in favor of the question, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Now we're addressing the motion. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. So the meeting will be on the 27th.
And I apologize, can I back up one more? In speaking with the Hill City Theater, these were the available dates open. However, that phone call was made about a week ago. So if that's already been reserved, I would like to have the authority to set another date based on availability. So can we say,
Wednesday,
if
the
that doesn't
28th?
work, we can go for another date? The 28th, was that your second choice?
Mr. Chair, I'd make make a motion to allow the office manager to set that date on Wednesday, November 28th at 7 o'clock if the 27th is not available.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to identify the 28th as the alternative date. Any further discussion on that motion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next item. And,
So the second item on there is, now that you've chosen the theater in the Hill City School System, I need a motion to approve the chairman's signature on the facility use agreement, which basically goes into we're responsible for cleaning up the trash and making sure the floors are swept and so on and so forth. We are in a class that they do not charge us to use the facility. However, we are still liable if there is any damage that occurs.
That would be my motion.
I'll second it.
moved and seconded. Are you clear on the motion? Okay. Any further discussion on that motion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Third item, we will need to do some advertising to fulfill statute, so I would like a motion to approve the additional expense that we will incur for holding the public meeting.
Look at this.
So move, Mr. Chair, to a maximum $175.
Is there a second? Motion and a second to approve the additional dollars for advertising at $175 approximately.
I don't know what that means.
Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Another item would be to approve the chairman's signature on letters requesting DENR and the EPA be participants in the meeting.
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I think we all understand what was in the motion. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
item 5 is not there, informational, I'll make a motion that this meeting be informational only, and afterwards we have an open house to have one-on-one discussions with the presenters.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Excuse me, I didn't see anything on there that talked about the format of the meeting.
It's right there at the top in item 1. We just went by it and went back to it.
The format of the meeting is, let me just boil it down. Is this going to be a one-sided presentation, or is this going to be a presentation by all parties that have something to bring to the table?
If I understand what we approved, that this will be an informational presentation by agencies and entities that are involved in the program, so that the public has an understanding of what it is, and at some future date, when and if it becomes an issue in front of the commission, it will be dealt with then.
Last meeting, if Holly's note was in response to the discussion of the last commission meeting, as I recall, the discussion of the last meeting, it had to do with other viewpoints of what needs to be done or not being done. So if that's the basis or premise for this meeting, then certainly, I would think that you folks would want input from anyone that has something to offer and not just a one-sided presentation.
Mr. Chair, I believe that we've been told over and over again that you're unable to get information. This is our attempt to provide that information to you. If you don't want us to do that, we don't have to, George.
Once again, last meeting, Kurt talked about sampling data, and yes, we would like updated sampling data, but that's only a part of the discussion on this issue. Are we doing or too much or not doing enough? We need input from everybody and not just the folks that are promoting this.
Mr. Chair, maybe we should reconsider our previous motion and just not do this. Because obviously, they are not interested in information.
Well, wait a minute. I accept that. Essentially, the agencies involved in delivering the program are the people who will provide the information to the public about the various features of the program, the various requirements, what the sources of statutory foundation might be. And then once the public has, in the Spring Creek area, has the information, they can tell this commission whether they want Pennington County to be in or out. We're moving towards segment 2, and this seems to be a very appropriate time to refresh and expand on public understanding of it. The public's involvement, at least as a private landowner, isn't totally voluntary. And so if I understand what Ms. Strong said and what you're saying, George, is none of the people that would be presenting would be, some of this other information would be technically or legally responsible for delivering a program as such. And if you want to have a separate meeting convened by the citizens before or after this to present the information that is represented here, that's your prerogative.
Well, I looked at the meeting as being a hearing as opposed to informational meeting, and we're just quibbling with words, obviously, but for you 5 folks, and hopefully you would all show up, and then you could hear all sides, not just the government side. The government side is one side of the EPA guy's going to come in here and he's going to say that there's hogs. You know, how credible is that person going to be?
Okay.
How credible is that person going to be?
I think
the EPA guy that signed that document or prepared the document for signature said that the primary dominant animal source in contaminating Spring Creek was pig.
And it was conditioned in the report by a question relative to that. And I think that's fairly accurate, that there was a question in the part of the reporter's mind. Now,
pardon me?
Now, just a minute. We have talked about this enough. We're going to move on. There's no more debate about this. And so the next item is planning and zoning, the consent calendar.
One more thing, this is professionals. This is Stock Growers Association and RCAF Association that's put out this report. They do the same thing that you do. They work with these folks at the same time, and for you to discredit them, but we will take the advice of you, and we will have the meeting prior to, so that the people get a whole picture, and we can either work together or not. But, you know.
Ma'am, you're done. You're done.
Just
will you
consider looking at the thing that I gave you? Will you consider looking at the document?
You need to understand that I am in charge of this meeting, and you are responsible to respond to the chair, and I am saying you are done. And if you do not comply, you are violating the rules of this meeting.
I will comply. Thank you.
Please sit down.
Why do we have to do this every meeting?
Next item is item 30, the Planning and Zoning Consent Calendar.
Dan Jennison, Pennington County Planning Director. The Board of Commissioners uses a consent calendar to act on a non-controversial and routine planning and zoning items quickly. The consent calendar or agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote by the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of the board member or a citizen. The consent agenda for the planning and zoning contains the following items. Item A, Spring Creek Watershed Management and Project Implementation Plan, approval of payment application for Alton and Barbara Bertschinger, SPC 2011 PC 54 for $3,061.23. Approval is recommended. Item B is a second reading of a major planned unit development amendment, PU 12-03 for Kathy Boyum. Approval is recommended. Item C is a second reading of a rezoning request, 12-10 for Kathy Boyum, and approval is recommended. Item D is a layout plat, 12-37 for RMS Load, Matt Keck, and approval is recommended.
Does anyone wish any of the items on the consent calendar removed?
Here we go.
Mr. Chairman, Dan Richter, I'd like to remove item A for discussion if I can.
Is there anyone else? Item A has been removed from the consent agenda. That leaves items B, C, and D. Is there anyone else wishing to remove any of those items? If not, Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve B, C, and D of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve items B, C, and D on the planning and zoning consent agenda. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item A.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not opposed to this based on the same reasoning I had last time. These people are acting on good faith that you're going to pay them. So the question I have is on August 31st, 2011, the cutoff for points for funding was 300. On January 31st, 2012, the cutoff apparently has moved to 200 and made them eligible for this, yet when you try to find documentation, there's nothing that you can't find it anywhere where the justification was to move the cutoff from 300 points to 200 points.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Have you asked anybody for that information? Have you asked anybody for that information?
Yeah, I've been down to these guys. It's
Have
all
you asked?
classified.
Have you asked for that information? Mr. Richard, can't you answer my question?
Yeah, I have answered your question.
Did you go down there and ask for this information?
I went down and asked for information.
Did you go down and ask for this information?
Any clarification?
Sure. Good afternoon, Brittany Molitor, Water Protection Coordinator. I have a memo that was written to the Commission on September 6th in your packet as part of the recommendations for the advisory group. The recommendation was to approve the cost share applications with a minimum ranking of 250 points. I do have that. On the handout to the advisory group on August 31st, I do have the table. It was to 250 points. And then on September 27th, it was approved by this board, those recommendations. So that's what I have.
Thank you.
Before I comment about the application, I don't know all of Dan's history, but we owe him. He's disabled 30-year veteran of the military.
George,
And he,
we don't owe anybody an explanation or allowing to come in here and beat us every time we have a meeting.
your temperament,
Nobody has the right to do that to anybody, not me to you, or you to me, or him to me.
Ken, we have
And
no idea what.
frankly,
what
I
this
am
guy-
had
what this
about
guy's-
enough.
Mr.
You,
Chair,
you need to be a little bit more calm, Ken.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve item A as presented.
But I,
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The public comment period is coming.
okay, go ahead.
We have a motion and a second. Anything relative to the motion?
I recommend disapproval and in keeping with Ron's comment, which I fully supported, about spending taxpayer dollars, and I don't care whose taxpayer dollars they are, but I fully support what Ron said about spending taxpayer dollars on private property. I'm sure you paid for your septic system, and I paid for my septic system, funding government assistance. So I would expect at least one no vote, Ron, just for the record.
Well,
That's an order.
thank you, Mr. Farabee, and I still maintain that. Unfortunately, on a thing like this, we've already approved the project, they've already done the project. I don't see how we can deny them payment. We've already basically approved it. Otherwise, appreciate it. Thank you, George.
As long as they're on record,
Mr. Chair, I call the question.
and if anybody can show.
I have one question.
While the debate's still going, you can't call the question. If you want to follow Robert's rules, the debate's still continuing.
I thought you stopped there
can't-
once.
you-
That's when I said that, I
You
called the
can't,
question.
you interrupted our dialogue, okay?
Okay.
Oh.
Let's knock it off. We're done playing games. Ma'am, if you have something to say relative to the motion, say it, and then we're not going to debate it any further.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me speak there. Just the relevant part is because you guys had brought up about getting some additional data, and on the motion of payment, I guess I would ask if you guys would consider waiting on other payments in the future until we get this updated data. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I'll make a motion to continue E and F pursuant to the staff's recommendations.
Second.
Motion and a second. Say that again.
Pursuant to the staff's recommendation, they're recommending a continuation to the 12/4/12 BOC meeting, and that would be my motion.
Item E.
So you're
And
covered.
E and F.
Any discussion on the motion? If not, those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Committee reports.
That was that last motion, which were item E and F, both, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yep, okay, thank you.
I don't have any.
Newly,
Chair,
I've been attending a couple of different Mountain Pine meetings. What we're doing is we're giving information about the Mountain Pine beetle, about where we're at in the county to the, well, in the region, to the legislative representatives as well as the 3 congressional representatives. It's been a very good exchange of information, and certainly they, we have our support, but they should also know what's going on. So.
Commissioner Holloway? I don't have anything.
I really don't have anything. The couple of committees I've been scheduled to go to have postponed. I got to get out of here and go to a Council on Aging, and it should fit right in with today's meeting. Because I'm growing old by the day.
do you have anything?
no, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think I kind of gave my report on the 4-H recognition program earlier. And would also comment that we had the annual RC&D meeting, and I attended the West Pennington Conservation District annual meeting the other night, and we'll be going to the one in East Pennington next week or so. Everything seems to be going well for those folks. Next item is public comment.
We need executive session.
Okay, hearing no comment, we'll have item 33. And where are we on that, Holly?
I believe you have one item.
One item, okay. We need to go into executive session.
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.